Good morning all and welcome to the ordinary meeting of council for Wednesday the 25th of May, and I'd like to now open the meeting by welcoming councillors, staff, members in the gallery and also those watching on live stream, as well as Pastor Glenn Vonhoff. Thank you for being with us today, Glenn. I'd now like to declare that there are no requests for leave of absence, and ask Pastor Glenn if he would be so kind as to come forward and provide the opening prayers. Thank you, Glenn.
Well, good morning, Mayor and councillors and office staff. It's good to be here again. If I said to you, do you enjoy coming to work? What would your answer be? It's not always enjoyable, is it? I want to tell you a story, which you probably heard back in 2003. There's a fellow called Ralston, who was on a hike through the mountains in Utah, in the United States, and he was climbing down through a crevice, and he dislodged a rather large rock weighing several hundred kilograms, which jammed his hand and his wrist against a boulder. You might remember the story. And try as he may, he couldn't get out. He couldn't get this thing loose, and he hadn't told anyone just where he was going, which is a cardinal sin. If you're going out hiking, you should tell somebody. So he had 3 litres of water with him and a little bit of food because he's only got to hike that day. 5 days he was there, trapped, couldn't get his wrist and hand out from beyond that rock. And his water had run out and his food, and he felt that it was coming to the end of the road. And so he thought, what'll I do? And then he had what he says was a vision. And in this vision, he saw a little boy, 3-year-old, run towards him, and he scooped him up with his left arm. And he took that to mean that he had to get out by cutting his arm off. So he took out his pocket knife and he cut through this area here. He put a tourniquet around this area. He cut through here, but he couldn't cut the bone with the pocket knife. So then he broke both the bones in this part of his arm. He broke them. How you do that, I don't know. But he did that. He broke them, and once he'd broken them, he could cut through the tissue that was remaining. And he got loose, walked out, couple saw him. They called the helicopter, which was already looking for him, and he's flown back and he lived. He married, and indeed he had 2 sons, just as per that vision. So you might say, what's that got to do with you here? Well, I want to tell you that if you want to enjoy doing what you're doing, sometimes you've got to cut off some of the things that are affecting you and are making you not enjoy what you're doing. You see that? You've got to release that. You've got to leave that behind. I got a mate, I've got to do his funeral on Saturday, Mark Smith at Mergen. And I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, we were in business in Mergen in real estate, and he walked over to me and said, I work at Thompson's Menswear, Brian wants to sell it, I'm thinking about buying, what do you think I should do? You know what I said to him? Do you enjoy what you're doing? He said, I love it. I said, buy it. There's not many people can enjoy what they do and actually get paid for it. So in the Bible, it says something, and I want to bring it to you. It says this in Romans 14, 10 to 12. You then, why do you judge your brother or sister? Or why do you treat them with contempt? For we will all stand before God's judgment seat. It is written, as surely as I live, says the Lord, every knee will bow before me and every tongue will acknowledge God. So then, each of us will give an account of ourselves to God. If you were called before God right now, what account would you give? Let us pray. Father, we are just so grateful to be living in a democracy where many people play a part in making sure the needs and the desires of our citizens are heard and met. As those elected to the South Bend Regional Council work together to find solutions to difficult problems, we ask that you guide them so that they speak respectfully to one another, with humility to one another, and help them to show Christ-like love to those they interact with and they work with, so that they can enjoy serving their community and working with each other. We are also grateful to the staff and workers of the council. They have such an important job keeping the offices running as they should, and for the physical work being completed satisfactorily. Thank you for the gifts that you have given them, and help them, Lord, to effectively use those gifts to carry out their roles. Grant each one love, grace, strength and encouragement, and the knowledge needed to approach each situation in the best way possible, and that they might see your presence in the work they do and enjoy serving their community. We pray this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Glenn. You're quite welcome to stay for our meeting, but we understand if you have to leave because we know that you will have a busy day, no doubt, doing God's work. I'd now like to invite Councillor Duff to provide an appropriate recognition of our traditional owners. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to acknowledge country and the land where we meet this morning, the Waka Waka land, and acknowledge the elders both past, present and emerging. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Item 5 is opportunity for councillors to disclose any conflicts of interest in relation to today's agenda. Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I, Councillor Danita Potter, inform this meeting that I have a declarable conflict of interest in relation to item 19.2, the payment proposal of overdue rates. The nature of my interest is as follows. This declarable conflict of interest arises due to the close personal relationship, and I propose to leave the meeting and stay away from the place where the meeting is being held while the matter is being discussed and voted on. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I, Scott Henson, inform this meeting that I have a declarable conflict of interest in relation to item 19.2, payment proposal for overdue rates various. The nature of my interest is as follows. This declarable conflict of interest arises due to a close personal relationship. I propose to leave and stay away from the practice where the meeting is being held while this matter is discussed and voted on. Thank you, Mr Mayor. And could I also bring to Chamber's attention in 17.1, just to be noted on page, from pages 344 to 369, I have possible declarable conflict of interest because within those agenda items I have personal contacts and friends which I don't believe will hinder any decision I make in this chamber.
Thank you, Councillor. Do any of those relationships constitute what you believe would be a close personal relationship?
That's correct, Mr Mayor.
Do they or not?
Sorry, yes, they do.
They constitute a close personal relationship?
Can do, yes.
If that's the case, then that gives rise to a declarable conflict of interest. You have the opportunity to either leave the meeting for item 17.1 or refer the matter to council for a decision.
Yeah, happy to leave the meeting, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Duly noted. Thank you, Bree. Anything further, councillors? Now, should you come across an item throughout the course of the agenda that you feel or discussion that could give rise to a conflict of interest, you still have the opportunity to put your light on and let me know, and we can deal with that as we come across it. Okay, item 6, deputations or petitions. We don't have any of those today. So we'll move on to 7.1, minutes of the council meeting held here on the 27th of April 2022. Those minutes can be found at page 7, where it's recommended that the minutes of the council meeting held on the 27th of April 2022 be received and the recommendations therein be adopted. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, thank you. Second to Councillor Potter. Speakers? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Just your light there. Thank you, Councillor Henson. Okay, 8.1, business outstanding table for ordinary council meeting is at 45, where the table has been provided referencing those items that are outstanding in relation to resolutions adopted by council from previous meetings. Recommendation is that the business outstanding table for the ordinary council meeting be received for information. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, second to Councillor Shoemaker. Speakers? To the vote, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Item 9, we have no notices of motion to table today. So we'll move on to 10.1, confirming attendance at the Lgaq Civic Leaders Summit on the 29th to the 30th of June 2022. That is at page 111, where it is a report provided, and Council, we are seeking a nomination for a third attendee to the summit on the basis that I will be unable to attend for personal reasons. So at the bottom of page 111, we have a potential recommendation there. So is there anyone that wishes to move a motion to nominate one of the councillors? Anyone? Councillor Duff, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I nominate Deputy Mayor Gavin Jones.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Shoemaker. Speakers? Councillor Duff, first opportunity to speak.
I just think that in your absence that we could have the Deputy Mayor would be appropriate.
Further speakers? No, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 10.2, appointment of councillor representatives on council committees and other organisations. 113. There is a table provided that commences on page 114, where it is recommended that the following councillors be appointed as the council representatives to council committees and other organisations as listed below. The table is, as I said, on page 114, 115, as presented. Do we have a mover for such? Councillor Potter. A seconder? Councillor Shoemaker. Speakers? Councillor Potter? No. Mr CEO, thank you.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Just for clarification, I was asked a question about Australia Day judging panel. We'd moved outside of what was previously adopted last year. We actually had 4 councillors listed on the panel for last year, so 4 councillors is fine as far as... And we also pulled the guidelines, and there's no conflict with the guidelines. Last year we had Mayor Otto, Councillor Farrelloff, Councillor Potter and Councillor Henson as delegates to that committee, so that one's fine. The other one, when we went through the other day, the Wide Bay Burnett Resource Group, we had missed that one in the conversation, so that column is still blank. So if council wishes to fill that one in. And the other question I have for councillors, which we can add with the leave of the meeting, the Ringsfield House Advisory Committee and the engagement is about to start or commence very shortly in June. There'll be a process to pick the chair through that process. Would councillors like to add that committee onto this list while we're going today? We'd need 2 councillors for the Ringsfield Advisory Committee and pick that up today, or would you prefer a separate report, Mayor?
Okay, so 2 matters there, councillors. First, the Resource Committee. There is no nomination there, the Wide Bay Burnett Resource Group. It is halfway down on page 115. Do we have, before we continue further, do we have a nomination for that? Any nominations? Councillor Erkins?
Yes. Oh, sorry.
You've got your light on?
So,
please stand, councillor, and address the Mayor. Thank you.
sorry, I actually had a light on another matter, on the drug action team. I see there is Danita's in there. Is there any reason we can't have 2 representatives?
So we'll just refer to Councillor Potter. And what page is that on, Councillor Erkins?
Page 115.
115, okay. Local Drug Action Team. We have 1 portfolio councillor stated at the moment, Mr CEO. Can that be amended here on this schedule?
Sorry.
Thank you. It can be amended, Mayor. I'm just not aware of how many representatives we have to that committee. That's the question.
Okay, well, perhaps we can insert that subject to agreement by the relevant committee. Mr CEO, Councillor Potter.
Yeah, I can talk to that. That's actually when we got some funding through LDAT, through the Local Drug Action Team, through the Australian Drug and Alcohol Foundation. We managed to get some funding to do some work there, and we worked on the FASD, the fetal alcohol syndrome work with the community. But it's actually, we don't have the funding anymore, but we thought just in case we did get the funding, because council applied for that. But having Councillor Erkins on it is fantastic. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Erkins, we'll insert your name there. Second councillor, Mr CEO, if we can. Back to the Wide Bay Burnett Resource Group. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I would actually like to nominate to participate in the Wide Bay Burnett Resource Group. I think with the experience I've got, certainly in the resources sector, But also certainly, I think there are enormous opportunities for the Wide Bay in that area, and it's important for our council to be at the table. So I'd certainly appreciate the opportunity to participate.
Thank you, Councillor. If we can insert Councillor Shoemaker there. Thank you, Bree. Okay, and the other one was the Ringsfield House Committee, Advisory Committee. For comments on that, Councillor Erkins.
I'd definitely like to be a part of that committee.
Thank you. So we have Councillor Erkins has come forward. Councillor Potter.
Yeah, I would like to be on that committee too with Councillor Erkins. Thank you.
Councillor Duff.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'm just thinking that as I'm the portfolio holder, perhaps I should be on that committee. That was just a thought, but is it okay to have three, or I'm not really sure how that works?
Mr CEO, do we have a terms of reference for this committee?
We're putting that process through, so if council's of the will to put three on, I don't really see that. The committee will need to pick a chair at this point in time. We're not up to that point. So, Mayor, if we add three here today, we can work with it as we go through the process.
Thank you, Mr CEO. So that's been noted on the table as presented on screen now, councillors. So we'll just change the recommendation there, as amended, if we could. Thank you, Bree. So just backspace. Yeah, that's fine. That's listed below as amended. Thank you. Okay, further speakers? We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Item 10.3 is delegations under the Water Supply Safety and Reliability Act of 2008. That's 119, whereby it has been recommended that pursuant to Section 257 of the Local Government Act 2009, Council delegate the exercise of the powers contained in Schedule 1 at the Instrument of Delegation Water Supply Safety and Reliability Act 2008, Queensland, to the Chief Executive Officer. These powers must be exercised subject to any limitations contained in Schedule 2 of the Instrument of Delegation, and repeal all prior resolutions delegating the same powers to the Chief Executive Officer. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, seconded Councillor Jones. Speakers? To the vote, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 10.4, Draft Council Annual Operational Plan, 22-23, page 140. Where it has been recommended from the committee meeting that the draft South Burnett Regional Council Operational Plan 2022-23 as presented be approved for inclusion in the Operational Plan Development Workshop to be held on the 6th of June 2022 prior to the adoption of the 2022-23 budget. Do we have a mover? Councillor Jones, seconded Councillor Shoemaker. Speakers? Councillor Jones? No? We'll go to the vote. No? Those in favour? Yes? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay. 10.5, Adoption of the Council's Revenue Policy for 2022-2023, Statutory 005 at 160. Whereby it's recommended that the South Burnett Regional Council Revenue Policy 2022-2023, Statutory 005, be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff. Seconder? Councillor Henson, thank you. Speakers? Councillor Duff. Further speak?
No,
Councillor
Mr.
Duff? No, thank you. Further speakers? To the vote? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 10.6, Adoption of Council's Computer, Internet and Email Usage Policy, Statutory 007 at 166. Recommendation is that the South Burnett Regional Council Computer, Internet and Email Usage Policy, Strategic 007, be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover? Councillor Henson, seconded Councillor Potter. Speakers? We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 10.7, Adoption of Council's Investment Policy, 2022-2023, Statutory 009 at 170, whereby it is recommended the South Burnett Regional Council Investment Policy 2022-2023 be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, seconded Councillor Henson. Speakers? To the vote, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. I will point out for those watching and to the gallery that many of these policies have been through a standing committee meeting. So we have reviewed them, we've discussed them, we've debated them, and now they're being adopted by resolution today. So please don't think that we haven't been through these policies in quite a bit of detail in previous meetings. 10.8. Adoption of Council's Infrastructure Asset Naming Policy, Strategic 026 at 177, whereby it is recommended that the South Burnett Regional Council Infrastructure Asset Naming Policy, Strategic 026, be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker, seconded Councillor Potter. Speakers? Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 10.9, adoption of the South Burnett Regional Council Community Engagement Policy, Statutory 050. Now that is at 184. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to change on page 186 on the dot point where it says informing all councillors and the executive leadership team of community engagement initiatives of relevance. I'd just like to change that to be inform all councillors and the executive leadership team of community engagement initiatives of relevance. And in the top part, in a commitment to effective and appropriate community engagement when working together, councillors and staff shall inform all councillors. So that's page 166 in the general information section.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. So we've got page 166, a proposal there. Mr CEO, we would need to also, if we're going to reword that, we would need to change the other bullet points to reflect that. Mr CEO, thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. Just Councillor, so I've got it right. So where it's been changed from the standing committee, so in a commitment to effect an appropriate community engagement when working together, councillors and staff shall. So consider is removed, inform is inserted, correct?
Yes, just
Yep. No,
take out consider and then just put inform in the next dot point. Thank you.
Oh, so shall. Okay. Yep. Yeah. So
Okay.
So it shall inform instead of informing. So I've got those two correct. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, we would need, Mr CEO, to change bullet point 2 to say consider opportunities.
Yep. So
Otherwise, that won't be obviously grammatically correct.
so if we make a note, Mayor, to change
Yes.
the grammar.
Change the grammar. Consider opportunities. Item 3 would need to say establish policies. Point 4, consider. Point 5, consider. If that's going to be correct, Councillor. Are you happy with that?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I just, yeah, I'm absolutely happy with that. I just think that that they only need to inform them councillors where it's relevant, and it's, yeah, I just think that we need to be strong on that and clear.
Okay, so we've got a motion put forward by Councillor Duff that the South Burnett Regional Council Community Engagement Policy Statutory 050 be adopted as amended. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Henson, thank you. Speakers, Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, I just think that by just taking the word consider, it's clear. In a commitment to effective and appropriate community engagement when working together, councillors and staff shall inform all councillors and the executive leadership team of community engagement initiatives of relevance. So I think that, I know that you were concerned about that it's too onerous, but I think if it's just a CC to all the councillors and it's where it's of relevance. So I think that's, will tick every box for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, do we have further speakers? No? Okay, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 10.10, adoption of the South Burnett Regional Council Domestic and Family Violence Policy, Statutory 052, which is at page 188. Again, this has been through a committee meeting from where it has been recommended that the South Burnett Regional Council Domestic and Family Violence Policy, Statutory 052, be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker, seconded Councillor Potter. Speakers, Councillor Shoemaker? No? We'll go to the, further speakers, sorry. Shall we go to the vote? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 10.11, adoption of the South Burnett Regional Council Overgrown Property Policy, Statutory 062 at 193. Now again, this has been through significant discussion and debate at a committee meeting. The Standing Committee of Council recommended that the South Burnett Council Southern Regional Council Overgrown Property Policy Statutory 062 be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover? Councillor Henson, seconded Councillor Potter. Speakers, Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, just quickly, we did talk about this in depth at our previous standing committee meeting, and I think it gives better direction, and it simplifies this policy from what it was before. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Further speakers? To the vote, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 10.12, repeal resolution minute number 3029 and adoption of the South Bennett Regional Council Fit for Work Policy, Statutory 065, that's at 197, where from the committee meeting it has been recommended that in accordance with section 262 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, South Bennett Regional Council Resolution Minute Number 3029 relating to the adoption of the South Bennett Regional Council Fitness for Work Policy and South Bennett Regional Council Fitness for Work Procedure be repealed, and that the South Bennett Regional Council Fit for Work Policy Statutory 065 be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, seconded Councillor Henson. Thank you. Speakers, Councillor Potter. Further speakers? To the vote, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 10.13, quote SBRCQ 2122-42 for the purchase of one loader to replace plant number 1501 at 217. Now again, this matter has been raised, discussed, debated at a standing committee meeting where it has been recommended that South Bennett Regional Council purchase one New Holland W130D for $309,500 excluding GST from South Bennett Machinery. Reasons: that the machine is comparable to the John Deere 544K, that the assessment conducted demonstrated purchasing the machine locally was cheaper, and that the specification, suitability and whole of life value for money scores were comparable. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker, seconded Councillor Erkins. Speakers, Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I just wanted to acknowledge the work that has gone into the preparation of this quotation and the replacement of this equipment. I really do feel passionately about buying machinery from local providers wherever we can, and really do appreciate council's support in making this recommendation, which I know was against that of what would have occurred if we had have followed our criteria. But I do feel that purchasing the machine locally keeps the money locally circulating in our economy, and I know we as councillors are very passionate about that. So just want to thank the Chamber for their support. I commend this motion to the Chamber.
Okay. Further speakers, Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I just want to make a quick comment around the whole of life costing here. Now, it doesn't apply to all the contracts that we're just about to discuss, but I just want to make note that when it comes to whole of life costing and heavy machinery, with the value of your I'm lost for what am I looking for? Sorry. The maintenance and all that sort of stuff, warranties, with your whole of life warranties. At the back end of a whole of life machine, when we start talking about 10 years, the comparison between some of these warranty setups between 5 years, 3 years, up to 7 years, just need to be aware of the whole of life costing, and because at the back end of a whole of life machine operation, that's where you need to spend your money. So some of these quotes totally take on Councillor Shoemaker's comments, great to support local, but just need to be aware that some of these plants that we are purchasing have got significant differences in warranty setups and the amount of years that we have. So at the back end of heavy machinery, that's where your costs come into it. So we just need to be aware of that.
Further speakers? Councillor Shoemaker, right of reply.
Yes, Mr Mayor, certainly that's been included in the report before council. I think there's been a really stringent assessment of the equipment and its fit for purpose use here. I've listed the reasons why I feel that we should purchase this equipment locally instead of purchasing it out of town. The machine is comparable to the John Deere 544K, that the assessment conducted demonstrated purchasing the machine locally was cheaper, and that the specification, suitability and whole of life value for money scores were comparable. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
To the vote, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 1014, quote SBRC Q 2122-43, purchase of one grader to replace plant number 1504, page 228, whereby the recommendation that has come from the committee is that South Burnett Regional Council purchase one Komatsu GD 655-5 for $399,800, excluding GST, from Komatsu. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Shoemaker. Thank you. Councillor Potter. Further speakers. Councillor Erkins first. Thank you.
I was under the impression that there had been some emails come from some of the other councillors regarding the suitability of this machine compared to the John Deere, and taking into consideration, I also had a conversation with Councillor Jones, who said, well, he can probably tell you what he said about it, but that the John Deere is a machine that is probably better and gives better value for money. It's more money, but it does a better job than the Komatsu. But I'll take advice from those who know better.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did circulate an email yesterday, and I know in the conversations that we had at the committee meeting, we were discussing exactly what Councillor Erkins has highlighted here. I had just raised that I intended to ask, I see certainly in the report that the John Deere scored higher in terms of specification, can't get that word right today, suitability. It was a 5 versus a 4.65 and was comparable with warranty, 5 versus 5. Scores, however, scored a 4 versus a 5 for whole of life value against the Komatsu against the John Deere. The price was $432.5 for the John Deere, and the Komatsu scored a 5, being $399,800. So you can see the price variance there of $32,700. But I am of the view that it might be worth, we had some feedback at the committee meeting that some of the operators felt the John Deere was a better machine to operate, and I'm of the view that it may be worth council considering amending this motion to purchase the John Deere instead, as we've already got a Komatsu in the fleet and the John Deere has more power and torque. I just wanted to confirm that my understanding of the operator feedback was that they preferred the John Deere machine, and just wanted to confirm that with the chamber this morning through General Manager Jarvis, please, Mr. Mayor.
General Manager Jarvis, thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor, for the question. I appreciate the warning there as well, or forward advice that, and we did go and revisit with the operators and discussed their feedback there. So I'm happy to provide their feedback was that we actually have a Komatsu and a John Deere graders already in our grading, patrol grading crews. So we do have one of each machinery. It is the operator's preference there, and they've identified that the air con system in the John Deere does keep the cab cool in higher temperatures during summer, whereas they've noticed that at times the Komatsu does not keep the cab as cold. However, they say that they believe that it's got better power, and is it torque? Torque, there you go, thank you, which allows the machine to grade and push material easier and faster. The programmable reversible fan allows the operator to set the fan at time intervals to reverse, which blows dust and dirt from the radiators and coolers. This will reduce the number of manual cleans required before allowing the grader to operate for longer. And they believe that it's got the best hydraulic flow rate, allowing the hydraulics to operate easier when under load combined with high power and torque outputs, the grader can operate faster. So that was the feedback from the operators, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you, General Manager. We'll stay with you, Councillor Shoemaker. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I would like to propose an amendment to the motion. I'll foreshadow the motion, yes? Thank you. That South Burnett Regional Council purchase one John Deere 670G for $432,500 from RDO Australia. I'm assuming that price is excluding GST. I agree. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move my foreshadowed motion.
Thank you, Councillor. So we'll come back to that shortly. So we'll deal with the current motion at hand, which was for the Komatsu. Further speakers in relation to that matter? Okay, so Councillor Potter moved that. Anything to wrap up, Councillor Potter, before we go to the vote? Okay, we'll go to the vote. So we're voting now on the council purchase one Komatsu. Those in favour? Those against? Okay. So the motion has been defeated by unanimous vote. We'll go on to Councillor Shoemaker's foreshadowed motion now, where Councillor Shoemaker has put forward a motion that South Burnett Regional Council purchase one John Deere 670G for $432,500 excluding GST from RDO Australia. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Jones, thank you. Speakers, Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I just feel this really is a critical piece of kit. It travels many kilometres, hundreds of kilometres every year, servicing our rural roads. And I just think it's important that we buy our staff the equipment they need to do the job efficiently. So I certainly commend this motion to the chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. In doing so, if you could just stay standing, thank you. Reasons for that, if you could just articulate some reasons, we can include that in the resolution. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll just refer to my notes. Reasons for it is that while council recognises the price difference, replacing the John Deere grader with a John Deere grader due to operator feedback that the machine is more efficient, it has more torque, more power, and means the job can be done easier and faster. Council recommended John Deere grader with a John Deere grader due to operator feedback. Is that sufficient, CO Mark?
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, so we have that motion moved and seconded. Further speakers? Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. I wonder, would you consider in that motion, the hydraulics also is more capacity in hydraulics, but also in, and you mentioned the purchase of a John Deere for 432,000. It's not just the expense there. We're getting a bigger machine and a much more efficient machine. But I wonder, would you consider taking into account that our department goes back, and with the volatile market that we're in today, that 432,500 A might not be still achievable, and B, the availability of that machine. Yeah. So would you perhaps consider taking on board that the availability and the pricing on that machine be noted as well?
We'll just have to be careful here, because we do have a motion. I'd suggested that's probably going to, well, could in fact, if we were to put that as a subject, to take away the effectiveness of the motion, Mr. CEO.
To you, Chair, Mr. Mayor, what we will do, we will action this resolution of council as quickly as possible, and if there's any issues and changes and we can't deliver for whatever reason, we'd bring it back. So this is effectively a decision point now. So so what's there will be actioned as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Further speakers? Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just quickly, very smart decision, and this conversation was had when we way back at the start. You get what you pay for. This is a good machine, and we've listened to what the people say that operate it, and they're out on the road. They know exactly what they need and what they need to do the good job. So, smart decision. Good change. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Further speakers? No? Okay, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. On to 10.15, quote SBRCQ 21/22-40, purchase of one backhoe to replace plant number 1515, that is at 236, where from the committee deliberations, the committee has recommended that South Burnett Regional Council purchase one New Holland B110B for $216,700, excluding GST, from South Burnett Machinery. Reasons: that the New Holland has more power, more fuel capacity, that we accept a higher fuel consumption based on these reasons, has the cheapest servicing costs, has a bigger bucket, and has a marginal 10mm difference in the stabiliser width. The machine scored the highest specific suitability score, and that council accept the lesser warranty term of 3 years in comparison to the recommendation that offered 5 years. And the grounds are purely that most trucks, heavy machinery and yellow fleet are unable to be purchased locally due to limited supplies, and that the cost of the machine is considered reasonable in comparison to the other tender provided. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker, seconded Councillor Dove. Speakers, Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very passionate about spending every dollar that we can in the South Burnett. I think this is a wise decision. I acknowledge that there is a shorter warranty term. However, the machine was comparable on all other fronts. And being that we've purchased it locally, if there are any issues, I feel that the dealer is actually here locally and can support our council and the team with any issues that may be experienced. Very passionate about keeping as many dollars as we can in our South Burnett economy. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Further speakers? Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. That was the point I was making earlier. There's a shortfall there in the warranty. Don't disagree with the councillor in the comments. Happy to keep the money in there as well, but we also need to be realistic about saving money too as well. In the back end of heavy plant, because the longer it goes in operation, the more likely you need to spend money, and if there's an extra 2 years, 3 years warranty, it certainly helps towards the costing of running that machine. All I was doing was bringing that to the attention of the people in the chamber. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Further speakers? Anything further, Councillor Shoemaker? We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 10.16, expression of interest, update for donation of replaced mowers to local community groups at 2:45, whereby the recommendation is that Council accept the report for consideration and approve the actions below to advance the proposed donation of identified plant to local community groups for expressions of interest. There are items presented there 1 through to 7, which I will just put forward as presented rather than reading them out. So first of all, do we have a mover for that? Councillor Duff, seconded Councillor Henson. Speakers, Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just think this is a wonderful initiative. I know that you championed it, Mr. Mayor, to get these mowers out to the local community groups, and I think that judging by the expressions of interest, is going to be fairly competitive to see who actually gets them, but it's a great initiative. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Further speakers? Shall we go to the vote? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. And again, to the community, all of these items have been through some rigorous discussion and debate at our standing committee meetings, which are also open committee meetings for the public to watch. So when we get to this stage, there has already been a lot of deliberation, debate and review by councillors. 1017, monthly financial report and the third quarter budget revision is at 253, where it is recommended that the monthly financial report, including capital works and works for Queensland, as at 30th of April 2022, be received and noted. That in accordance with section 173 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, the revised 2021-2022 operational budget be adopted, and that in accordance with section 173 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, the revised 21-22 capital budget be adopted. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, seconded Councillor Potter. Speakers, Councillor Duff. Okay, further speakers? Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to point out, just with that capital program expenditure, I did do a bit of a closer look. It's decreased by $2.054 million from $33.285 million to $31.231 million for the third quarter, and I know that the many changes are included in the table below. I just wanted to check in terms of the reasons why. Just wanted to revise. Was my understanding some of those projects were shelved due to materials and services, but I just wanted to confirm that through General Manager Jarvis, the reasons why the capital budget's decreased.
To you, thank you, General Manager Jarvis.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the question, Councillor. The reason why most of these have been taken or decreased our capital budget has been our incapacity to deliver because of the materials and that. However, the biggest majority of them have been moved into next year's capital program. So, for example, there's one here, there's 560,000 that has been moved from the Wandai swimming pool refurb. That goes into next year's capital budget. So there's a prime example. I would say probably about 90% of them are in next year's due to the inability of the to deliver in this financial year, but they haven't been lost.
We'll stay with you, Councillor Shoemaker. Anything further?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to confirm that.
Good.
Thank you. Sorry, just in finalisation, probably just caution everybody with that balance sheet with our 75% payment of fags, how that has impacted the bottom line, and how, I guess, as we go into the next year, very nervous about the fact that we've received that prepayment, which does make the end result look much better this year, but certainly will have an impact next year. So thank you to the finance team for a fantastic report once again.
Thank you, Councillor. Further speakers? Anything in closing, Councillor Duff? We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. We'll now move on to section 11, which is the roads and drainage portfolio of council, where 11.1 is a petition in relation to Hamilton Road and Muir Drive, South Nanango. That's at page 311, where it is recommended that council notes the report as presented. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, seconded Councillor Jones. Speakers, Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd also like to add to the recommendation that council notes the report as presented, and that we meet with the petitioners to discuss the plans for Hamilton Road and Muir Drive by the 31st of May subject to the availability of the petitioners.
Okay, that change has been moved by Councillor Duff. Councillor Jones, are you comfortable with that as the seconder?
Yeah, I have no issues with meeting with the petitioners 31st of May. My availability between now and then, Mr Mayor, due to family circumstances, I'd certainly like to be there because I have plenty of answers for some of the concerns that have been put forward. So, yeah, I'm happy for it to go ahead, but I guess I'll have my opportunity someday down the road to answer any requests or conversation that's had. But between now and the 31st of May, my time at council will be restricted due to personal family reasons.
Councillor, in light of the fact that this is your division and your portfolio, is there a better date if we were to push that back a couple of weeks, say to mid-June? Okay, so we said simply by mid-June, perhaps, we keep it simple, by take the word "the" out, by mid, yeah, and just pop a hyphen there. Okay, by mid-June. Okay, you comfortable with that, Councillor Jones? It's important that you be involved in that process. Councillor Duff?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I'm comfortable with that. I was obviously wanting to accommodate Deputy Mayor Jones, just thinking that given the background to the long list of issues around these two roads, I just think it would be courteous to meet with the petitioners just to let them know where we're at. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Further speakers? Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I just had a couple of questions for General Manager Lowe, just in relation to page 312, council actions, Hamilton Road and Muir. I wanted to confirm it is Muir Drive, not Muir Street. I've had Muir Drive, Muir Street and Muir Road. So Muir Drive, I've got that correct? Yes. Muir Drive for capital works upgrading to be considered by council in future programs, and residents advised of this. I know we've had some preliminary budget discussions around capital works programs, and it was my understanding these two projects had been flagged for the 22-23 gravel resheet program. I just wanted to confirm that I've got that true and correct.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. General Manager Lowe, I know certainly Manager Searle, this is probably going to come up in the next item, LRCI funding, but if you can confirm that those two items are in the gravel resheeting program for 22-23, thank you.
Yes, probably two things there. So the gravel resheeting for Muir Drive and Hamilton is in the proposed gravel resheeting program for next year, but we've also included the Muir Drive and Hamilton Road upgrade to sealed standard in the in the list of upgrade projects, which was also part of the handout in the discussions that we had on Monday.
Okay, with you, Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just wanted to confirm, in the list of upgrade projects, was that for consideration for upgrade to sealing from unsealed standard, or was there other considerations there? I just wanted to check.
Yep, so we're referring to the upgrade from unsealed to sealed, and that's correct. That's what the project essentially is.
So it has been captured on that long list. Yep.
That's correct.
And sorry, Mr Mayor, through you, my last question, just on page 313, in relation to the slashing on council verges creating a driving hazard, I know, on rural roads. I just wanted to understand, it was my understanding that the grading that we do, the annual patrol grade that we do in the area, is actually designed to remove the vegetation, and that's why we don't actually slash rural roads. I just wanted to confirm my understanding.
Manager Searle.
Yes, that's generally correct. So the slashing is undertaken on sealed road only.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just thought, in closing, the last point there on page 313, due to the unpredictability in road conditions of unsealed roads, road users are required to drive to the condition, and speed signage are not posted on these roads. I know that's certainly something that I have found in my time at council quite interesting. I've never really realised, I've driven many rural roads and never really looked for that there isn't a speed sign there. I just think, based on some of the commentary provided and the concerns around safety, it would be really good to do a story for our local community around the reasons why unsealed roads aren't signposted, and that really it is up to the responsibility of the driver to drive to the conditions. I just think that is something that's really unknown in our community. I know I've lived here my whole life and I didn't didn't realise that was the case. And I think anything we can do to try to educate and share that important safety message with our community is important, particularly after the recent rain and continued. We're on our 4th flood event. I am concerned that people need to drive to the conditions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Our media team, with our infrastructure team, will work to put a media release together. Thank you very much. Duly noted. Thank you, Mr. CEO. Okay, further speakers in relation to this item. Councillor Duff to close.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that I'm just asking. Thank you.
To the vote, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Moving on now to 11.2, Notice of Motion LRCI Funding Allocation Phase 3, 2022. Now that is at page 316. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to move an alternate motion to the recommendation, and I've already sent it through to Bree, so I'll just read it out. That South Bennett Regional Council reconsiders the allocation of $2,263,930 prior to the June ordinary meeting of Council, after a proper review of priority roads has been undertaken, including a bus tour by all councillors of each road put forward by the Divisional Councillor and or the Mayor.
Councillor, the amount I think is 2,163. So that's probably just
Oh, yes.
an error there.
Yeah, sorry, 163, yes.
That's the amount that was remaining according to the last report from the committee meeting. Okay, so we have that moved. Do we have a second of such? Councillor Erkins, thank you. Councillor Duff to speak to the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know there's been a lot of debate around this. There's been, first of all, there was the original motion was that we spend it on reseals and drainage and gravel resheeting, and then we changed to put some of the money towards Burt Road, and I know there's people in here who are passionate about Burt Road, and I would love to be able to seal Burt Road, but I think given the current state of our roads that we have to put that aside. I'd like to see some work done on Burt Road as part of this funding, including drainage and forming it back up, and some of these other roads, but I think that we need to make more informed decisions around what we do with big money, like over $2 million.
Councillor, just can you please speak to the chair, not to the gallery? Thank you.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. I think that we need to go out, get the boots on the ground, have a look around at all of the different roads. Councillor Erkins is a new councillor. It's hard for her to make a decision on some of these roads. I think that if we get in a bus, if we all put our priorities forward and we get in a bus and we go out and we have a look, and then we can make an informed decision rather than just picking and choosing roads because there's petitions or whatever. I think that we need to really get this right, and I'm concerned about Burt Road. I'm concerned about the roads out. I know that there's roads out around Geelong, and we've got Geelong people.
Speak to the chair, please, Councillor.
In the gallery, and there's issues in Nanango. I've got issues in my division. I'm sure that and I know around Kingroy there's a lot of roads, and including even just here in town, there's a lot of streets that need resealing. So I just think that this is a good way forward to get something happening with this. I know that we have to do it. We've got a timeline on it. That's why I've put the June ordinary meeting of council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I disagree with the motion presented. Certainly, I've had my boots on the ground. I feel I've made an informed choice when I put the recommendation forward, and I don't feel I am picking and choosing a road. Selecting a section of road to seal in the region based on its characteristics and functions each year is common practice for this council. This decision is very much business as usual, as each year we consider a project from the unsealed road register. I guess if council doesn't do this anymore, we should contact everyone on an unsealed roads register and tell them their roads will remain unsealed forevermore. That's something personally I don't think we should do. From the research I've undertaken, I'd like to inform the Chamber and the community of some of the dirt roads that have been upgraded to sealed standard since 2017. Williams Road, Blackbutt, 21-22 year. Memorandie, Barker Creek Road, Memorandie, upgrade from unsealed to sealed standard, 21-22 year. 2021 year, Williams Road, Blackbutt, upgrade from unsealed to sealed standard. 2021 Rural Road, Nanango, upgrade from unsealed to sealed standard. 1920 Old Esk Road, Nanango, upgrade from the unsealed missing link of approximately 2 kilometres to sealed standard. 1920 Niagara Road, reconstruction of sealed and upgrade to unsealed portion to sealed standard. 1920 Logan Road, Kingroy, upgrade from unsealed to sealed standard. 1920 Beatty Street, Proston, upgrade from unsealed to sealed standard. 1819 Rifle Range Road, Nanango, upgrade from unsealed to sealed standard. 1819 Memorandie, Barker Creek Road, upgrade from unsealed to sealed standard. 1718 Old S Road, Blackbutt, upgrade from unsealed to sealed standard. I absolutely agree that every road in the region has a function and we have a role to represent the people of our region impartially. However, no person in the region is more important than the next. And so I'd like to share some of the facts with you about why Burt Road should be upgraded from unsealed to sealed standard. In the roads hierarchy, it's a 5A road, meaning it's a high order road and is classified a rural feeder road. Caravans, motorbikes, trucks and vehicles use this road too. It leads to Hillview Cottages, a beautiful B&B that has approximately 85 to 90% occupancy rate. Some months are booked out back to back. I can confirm, as I've seen it for myself, that the cottage's veranda and outdoor area where visitors from afar come to stay are caked with dust. The closest church cabin is about 10 metres off the dirt Burt Road, and despite heavy vegetation around the church, the dark blue walls are dirty. There's no town water supply, so the owners are limited by how often they can wash down the cottages. For the past 27 years, people have travelled from afar to get married along the dirt Burt Road. The beautiful green lawn, which has hosted many ceremonies over these years, is about 15 metres off the road, meaning it's not uncommon for a wedding ceremony to get showered with dust. Imagine a giant dust cloud interrupting the most important day of your life. Hillview Cottages regularly provides accommodation to professionals servicing our region, such as doctors who work in our hospitals, some who said they only plan their visits to our region based on when they can get a cabin to stay. Some of them have experienced damage to their vehicles too. Hundreds of people, including locals, cycle the Clarkson Towns Link Road in the area, meaning it's not uncommon for bike riders to be in the vicinity and to ride the dirt Burt Road or stay at the cottages. Hillview Cottages have had tourists cancel their bookings or choose to stay elsewhere when they learn of the dirt Burt Road. The area has rich cropping country, and due to biennial cut of Debosia, residents estimate an increase of traffic of around 10 to 12 big trucks a day. Like many other roads, the Hillview school bus travels the dirt Burt Road every day. The road's commonly travelled by tourists who are looking to see where Matthew Hayden grew up or to look across the spanning views of our region. One house on the dirt Burt Road actually floods every time it rains because the profile of the road is so high, the water runs down off the road, currently scours out alongside their driveway and goes straight into their home. This resident actually sandbags his home. Residents have consistently raised concerns about the dust affecting their quality of life. They don't open up their windows or door, they worry about drinking their tank water and about the fine dust particles their families breathe in. So who am I to say any different? These are good people who have been advocating for this road to be sealed for many years. It's a heavily trafficked road. There are many small businesses who rely on it. There are drainage issues, scours, washouts and potholes, just like many other unsealed roads in our region. Residents say the road is slippery when it's dry. I know it's heavily corrugated in the first sections because I drove my Commodore over it, and to be honest, it was shaking so much I almost parked it up and walked the dirt Burt Road to meet with residents. So why should we overlook the needs of good, hard-working people on the dirt Burt Road who quite frankly have suffered because of derogatory comments made on social media judging their right to have a decent road and their campaign to have it upgraded? Why should we not support them when the decisions of council for many years shows...
Councillor, I'll interject and close. You've had 8 minutes. Thank you. I'll close and ask you just to be seated. Thank you. Okay. Okay, further speakers? Councillor Erkins.
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. I think there are many roads that are as bad and worse than Burt Road. I was not aware it was named Dirtbird Road, because there are many dirt roads in our region. I haven't gone and done the research that Kirsty has. However, I did spend yesterday out driving around Division 1. But who am I to make a decision as to whether one road is worse than an area in one of the other divisions? So I fully support going out. I believe that everybody should have an opportunity to look at all the roads. I'm told in council that I'm not here just representing Division 1, that I'm here to represent the region. So therefore, I believe that the roads should be judged on the region, not on who lives on the road or who comes and gives a great presentation on it, because there are a lot of roads that are, and I have driven the Burt Road. I went up there and met with some of the residents when there was a meeting called, and there was also in attendance at that meeting staff members who looked at the road. I was on the dust. You know, there are lots of roads where people are eating dust. People live on a dirt road, they buy a property on a dirt road, and some of the main complainers about the dust have not been there any more than 4 years, I believe. So I also spoke to a resident there who told me that she was quite happy with the fact, she was quite content, the fact she lived on a dirt road, she expected there to be dust. When the wind was blowing her way with the dust, she shut the windows. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do anything to Burt Road, but I'm saying as a new councillor who is unaware of some of these roads, I would like to go and look at some of the other roads, because it's easy when you live on a road and you hit a bump to get cranky. But, you know, I think there are a lot of people living with a lot worse roads than Burt Road, and I would just like the opportunity to inspect across the region to see what roads are more in need of being worked on rather than just one road.
Thank you, councillor. Further speakers? Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you. Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. I think the residents on Burt Road may take offence, Mr Mayor, to being labelled like who lives on their namesake. I would find that myself personally offensive. But that I would respect Councillor Herkins, that everybody on any road, doesn't matter what name you have or who you are.
Yeah, please address the mayor, not the councillor. Thank you.
That being said, this Burt Road has been on the agenda in council since 2016. Perhaps if something was done about it, and Councillor Jones, you may be able to add further, if something was done about it in 2016 or 17 or 18, the cost of the road wouldn't be as what it is today. If this gets left on the table or nothing happens with it, the cost of this road, and as with any roads, and this council will work hard, and it has done in my term just in 2 years, to make sure that roads are addressed. There was a contradiction, I'm sure I heard, with the petition on Hamilton Road and Muir Road, that we want to appreciate and respect that, and yet anything that's been labelled on Burt Road is going to be thrown out. So I'm fully supportive of Burt Road, and I commend Councillor Shoemaker for her research she's done on this with the conversations, and it's been on the table for a long time. So I'm fully supportive of this road. Yes, there are a lot of roads out there. We know that with the weather events we've had in the past 6 months. Of course we've got a lot of work to do, and I'm sure and I'm very comfortable and positive this council will continue to do so and work towards all those other roads that need addressing in time with budgetary allocations and what we have to work with. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, councillor. Further speakers? Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Interesting conversations to be had all the time when we discuss about resealing roads and the money, where we spend money. Councillor Shoemaker has done some wonderful in homework, for want of a better word, and all that sort of stuff. There was comments there that I guess can apply to a lot of roads, like the dirt roads everywhere across our region. So Councillor Duff has put forward a motion that we spend the time and we go out. Councillor Erkins is requesting that she needs to be able to be shown the roads and all that sort of stuff to make better decisions. And I recognise the fact that the councillor is now saying that we have a region to respond to, which is great. And two wonderful arguments put up on both sides. So Look, I'm more than happy, and I guess the people at in the gallery from Burt Road probably want a decision today, but I'm more than happy to take this on the road and have a look at it and make sure we do make the right decisions, because it may be an interesting outcome for whatever side you're batting on at the moment. But I'm more than happy to do this rather quickly, because we do have LRCI funding that we've got to decide on. We're hoping to do that today. But if Councillor Duff, through you, Mr Mayor, is requesting that we do the road trip, how are we going to make that decision here today for the staff to progress any LRCI funding? So I look to you to give us guidance on that, on how we proceed. But I'm more than happy to go out and have discussions. There's been comments around on Burt Road that we do dust suppression and all that sort of stuff. There's the thing that I struggle with, 1.5 kilometres, 3 houses get fixed up by the bitumen reseal. It doesn't go right to the far end of Burt Road. There's a narrow piece of road on Burt Road. The suggestion is, and we've had discussions, that we look at doing upgrades to the whole length of Burt Road with dust suppression and drainage and all that sort of stuff. Happy to have the conversations. This is fantastic, because this is a battle I've been dealing with for 2016. And like I said, I'm supportive of Burt Road to be sealed, but if you want to take the time, I'm happy to go and do the road trip and come back and address it. So that's...
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Potter, did you want the opportunity to speak? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I've been fighting for Burt Road since 2016. As I said in a previous meeting, Councillor Froloff and I met residents on Burt Road for quite some time up at Hillview Cottages. This is something that I actually believe that we should be doing. Business has expanded. There are a lot more businesses down there than when first started, and I think this is something that we should be supporting. And look, I'd love to do the full length, yes, most definitely. But through Mr Mayor, I'm just curious with regards to, you know, this bus trip. If we've got to have this LRCI funding done, I mean, how's this going to work? I'm really quite concerned that we're not going to be able to sit down together, work out this funding before the desired time for their staff.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, look, I'll address some of those questions and give a summation, then we'll go back to Councillor Duff for closing comments before we go to the vote on this. Mr CEO, the LRCI is a federally funded program. We need to notify the department as to what we're going to spend the money on by a due date. Do we know what that date is?
30 June, Mayor.
30 June. Now, the ordinary meeting of council is scheduled for, I believe, the 24th of June. Thank you. So, just to answer the question, if this motion was to be adopted by council, then we would need to undertake the relevant research, including the bus tour as proposed, in order to be in a position to make a decision a decision on the 24th of June, which would then give us until the 30th of June to notify the department. Would that cause any, in terms of mechanics, Mr CEO, if a decision was made the 24th, any issues with notifying the department by the 30th of June? 24th of June's the meeting, 30th of June's the due date.
Yeah, so Mayor, some of the timelines, just the mechanics of it would be, short answer, is it possible? Yes, it is. If there was any engagements with either the engineering staff or finance and senior grants officer that would be required, that week would be out, because they'll need to put their heads down to do very little other than that week. So we can reorganise appointments, but there would be nothing. We would also have to have the material pending final decision on the 24th of June. For the agenda, if we're getting it into the agenda in fair notice by the Friday the 17th of June. So you'd want to have your bus trip and discussions so that we could produce a report. If there is a report and it is what we understand, we can do the practicalities of it. Even if there's minor amendments, actually having that we can start the preliminary work before the meeting, which is sensible. So we'd be actioning something before it's endorsed, not final submission. That would still be that final week. It'd be very tight, Mayor, but it can be done.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Okay, so just in summation here, in terms of timing, should this be adopted, to answer Councillor Jones' question, we would have obviously to have something, a clear list of roads to be and work to be undertaken, projects by mid-June. That would give us 3 weeks to go through this process. That being the case, that would then, as Mr. CEO said, give the staff an opportunity then to put together a report in advance of the June ordinary meeting on the 24th. Look, I normally don't speak too much at these meetings, but I'm going to speak on this matter in summation because I know that this is obviously an issue that there's important to everyone here in the room. So Council received $3.3 million in funding from the federal government for local roads and community infrastructure. We, as a council, adopted by resolution that we would allocate $750,000 of that to George Street Car Park, which is behind the South Burnett Times over here in Kingroy, and that recently I think it's being looked at to increase that by another $75,000 due to the increase in materials and services costs that we're experiencing in the construction industry. That would then leave us with about, and I think there was some other expenditure there as well, but basically we were left with about $2.2 million, give or take some money, $2.2 million that council had adopted and resolved to spend on a renewals program across the region. Subsequent to that, a change to that resolution came back to include $1.25 million on Burt Road, which is an upgrade, not a renewal. Again, I am concerned from a finance point of view that if we spend 1.25 on sealing Burt Road, or any other road for that matter across our region, it will give rise to an increase in our depreciation cost and will take away funds that we could otherwise spend, council, on renewals, which would enable us to achieve our sustainability ratio, which we haven't been doing too great on in the roads department. I think we're probably, I believe, at less than 90% on transport assets into renewals because we haven't been able to fund that. Now, I could be stand corrected.
Yeah, point of order, Mr Mayor. I would like to confirm that, actually.
Yeah, I'm happy to have that confirmed at the end. But I think there was a workshop the councillors had shared that perhaps we're at 67% on transport assets, but that was conferred to me by a councillor, so I'll have that corrected. But certainly, we need to be focused on our renewals, I believe. Now, the intention of that $2.2 million was to spread it over key roads across the region, particularly in terms of bitumen resealing and some of the rehabilitation. I have several times now put forward to this organisation a spreadsheet of probably about at least a dozen roads across the region that I believe are more in need of work than Burt Road is. We have roads like Tim Dwyer Road. You can't get down that road when it rains. It's in a shocking state. South Nanango. We have, and I've put that on the list. Edward Street, Wondai. McLean's Road, Geelong. Swains Road at Geelong. We have roads like Industrial Avenue in Kingroy. Alfred Street east behind the peanut silos. If you drive along there, it is in need of major rehabilitation work. We have McAllister Street in Mergen, in need of major pavement rehabilitation and sealing. My view is that we have to focus on fixing what we've got first before we go bitumen sealing existing roads. Now, I have met twice with the residents of Burt Road. I've attended both meetings, the first meeting with Councillor Duff and the most recent meeting to which all councillors were invited, I attended with Councillor Erkins and Councillor Duff. Now, we had, thank you to the 4 staff that attended, the 4 engineers that came along on the day, and it is very problematic from what the engineers are telling me, and I'm happy to have Manager Lowe clarify this, to extend the double lane, and if we wanted to seal double lane, too far past Hillview Cottages, because once you get to the single lane section, the embankments on the side of the road are such that General Meehan made it very clear it's very difficult to widen the pavement. Now, at that meeting, it was identified that we have from this $1.25 million, we will be able to provide double seal on 1.4 kilometres. Now that will benefit 4 families, 4 properties. There are 9 more properties after that that will get no benefit. So, we had discussions with the engineers, I had discussions with the engineers about, is the money better spent on providing a really good quality gravel road that runs the full length from where the bitumen stops all the way up to the top of the hill, which is a lovely little lookout spot, and we provide a good double gravel road as far as we can, and then when we get to the embankment area, we resheet that as a very well resheeted gravel road with appropriate drainage. Maybe that would be a better outcome for all 13 families on Burt Road, not just the 4 that are impacted by this. And one of those families did say to me, and this woman's been there 57 years, and her comments were, I've lived here all my life. And when you come and live on a dirt road, or you're buying a dirt road, you expect to get some dust. Now, they were her comments. Now, in addition to that, yes, there will need to be drainage work done. I would rather spend the money on the drainage work and making sure everyone's got a good road, albeit a gravel road, rather than spend $1.25 million that will take away from not just the other 9 families on Burt Road, but will take away from many roads across our region that are seriously deteriorated and need rehabilitation and require resealing. And the roads I've mentioned are just a few. There are many, many more. So in light of that, I think this has a lot of value, that we should take our time. This is an important decision for council. Let's have a look at the roads with the engineers. Let's look at what the options are. My view is that this is sound governance, this recommendation, and I will be supporting it wholeheartedly. Okay, with that, I'll now go to Councillor Duff to conclude. Thank you.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, point of order, could we just confirm that asset renewal sustainability ratio that you've...
Happy to do so. So, General Managers, do we know what the asset sustainability ratio is for transport assets for road renewals?
Through you, Mayor. No, not at this time. We'd take it on notice if we can, please.
Take that on notice. That'd be good. Thank you. Okay. General Manager Jarvis, did you have anything to add to that?
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. I'm just advising the finance team. We're just having a look now. They're actually in a meeting, so I'll get back to you very shortly.
If you could. Thank you very much. Okay. Councillor Duff for right of reply before we go to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm just really concerned about the decision here if we go to bitumen upgrade Burt Road, because I think it sets a precedent. It sends a message across our region that if you petition to council, that you can, and you've been arguing for a long time to get your dirt road sealed, that once we do Burt Road, where's it going to end? Because I have a customer, 14 years ago, they asked me to do Paul Hole-Snagle Road. There were petitions. And council back then couldn't afford to upgrade Paul Hole-Snagle Road to a bitumen surface for the same reasons that we stand here now, because we have roads right across our region that are in an absolute mess. There's going to be some roads fixed through flood, but there's roads everywhere. I have a pile of customer requests that you couldn't jump over about people complaining about their roads. We have a massive backlog, and it was actually identified in a workshop, of over $12 million worth of backlog of reseals and $10 million in backlogs of pavement rehabilitation. And that was a pie graph that we saw only a couple of days ago. So I'm concerned about the precedent that we would set here, and also just wanting to support Councillor Erkins to have a look at all of the roads and support the Mayor, but also just in the interest of making a sound decision here. When we had the $2.2 million first allocated, there was an option to do 15 roads with that money. If we do Burt Road, it comes back to 4 in that list on the recommendation. So there's an opportunity to reseal all of those roads, or go out and do more like the Mayor said, there's only 4 people going to benefit with the if we just bitumen that short section, whereas there's 9 people who are going to still be on dirt. Like, I just am really concerned about this decision. I just think it will reflect poorly on our council if we don't get this right, if we don't go out and have a look and try and spread the money right across our region to fix up a lot more roads than just one road and perhaps potentially 4, because I just think the roads are a massive issue for us. I think that the people have spoken. I've put it out there and talked to community, right, like a lot of community people, and they are just thinking that we need to get our affairs in order, get our house in order, fix up the roads that we've got. And later on, if we had a bit of extra money, maybe we could do bits and bobs. But right now, our roads are in a mess. We've got potholes everywhere, and I'm just so keen to get out, have a look, and get this right for the sake of our region.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. I think we're probably repeating ourselves there. So, okay, let's wrap up that debate now. We'll go to the vote. We have the motion as presented on screen. Those in favour? Councillor Erkins, Councillor Duff, Councillor Jones, Councillor Potter and Councillor Otto. Those against? Councillor Shoemaker and Councillor Henson. The motion has been carried, 5 votes to 2. Thank you all. Well, I think we're overdue for morning tea, so I'll now move that we adjourn for morning tea. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Henson, thank you. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. And certainly members of the gallery, I'm not sure if we'll all fit next door, but if you'd like a cup of tea, let us know. We'd be happy to make you one if you'd like to stay on. Thank you. Resume the meeting. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Jones. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Right, so we are up to 11.3, notice of motion, seat for Mark Smith at 318. The agenda, whereby it is recommended from our standing committee meeting, South Burnett Regional Council arrange for the installation of a seat in front of Mark Smith Menswear, funded by the Mergen Business and Develop Association Incorporated. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, seconded Councillor Henson. Speakers, Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, since I moved this recommendation, sadly Mark Smith has passed away, which has really rocked our community, rocked the Mergen community, rocked the region actually. So we are still pushing ahead to do the seat. Just so everyone knows, Mark's funeral is this Saturday. Manager Watt has been really kind in progressing this, and we met with the Mergen Business Group, the executive, about wording for the plaque, and yeah, they've got some wonderful ideas. And I just wanted to. Yesterday, I got an email from, and it was obviously Manager Mark Watt has been negotiating to get a seat, and the proprietor of Harvey Norman wrote this email. Mark, thank you for your phone call today and the work you're putting into this tribute. It is heartwarming to know that Council was so willing to make this happen. Councillor Duff, many hearty thanks for your part in making this a reality. It is undoubtedly moving ahead at such a rate with you leading from the front. Mark was truly an icon. His loss will weigh heavily on all of us for some time. With this seat and plaque in dedication to his contribution to the town and region, it is comforting to imagine 2 figures sat upon the seat, sharing a yarn or two. In this we honour Mark. And that was from kind regards, Nick Thuracook, proprietor of Harvey Norman. And I just, everywhere you go, people are just moved by, the association they've had with Mark. And I just think it's sad that we didn't get the seat done. I was able to tell him, I saw him the day he died, and I told him that we were doing a seat for him. And I said the Mergen Business Association were funding the seat, and he and I just shared some tears because he was just so moved that the community thought that much of him. But we think way more of him than that. Just to put a seat there seems fickle, but it's the very least we can do, I think. And I just wanted to yeah, I know I'll get unanimous support for this, but yeah, Mark was a champion for our community. It's been it's been a tough time. I just wanted to send, on behalf of council, our sympathy to Janelle and the family during this sad time. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Further speakers? To the vote, those in favour? Carried unanimously, thank you all. 11.4, notice of motion highway slashing at 319. Recommendation is that inspections be undertaken or reviewed to determine if roadsides on the Burnett Highway, Bunya Highway and Diagula Highway have reached or exceeded intervention level, and if so, as per the RMPC contract, a third round of slashing be undertaken prior to 30 June 2022 and charged to the Department of Main Roads. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker, seconded Councillor Potter. Speakers? Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wondered if, through Manager Lowe, if there was any update in relation to this item that was discussed earlier this month.
Acting General Manager, thank you.
Through you, Mayor. Yes, I can advise that the inspection has been undertaken. The intervention level has been reached. We have contractors engaged currently now to undertake the third round of slashing in consultation with Main Roads, and they are happy that that will be inside our existing contract. So it's not an additional expense of council.
An excellent outcome. Yeah, thank you very much, General Manager, for that work. And I noticed the slashing on the way back through from Toowoomba yesterday, and it's looking very good. The quality of work's excellent. Thank you very much. Yeah. I know it hasn't been welcomed by everybody, but I actually thought the guys did a great job with the roadside spraying as well around the guideposts. It looks, it's made a huge difference to the ability to clean up those roads. So please pass on our sincere thanks to your team, Acting General Manager. Yeah. Okay, further speakers? No? Shall we go to the vote? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 11.5, Harris Road, Clark and Swenson Road, Edenvale North Road, intersections in Kingroy at 321. The recommendation is that South Burnett Regional Council notes the report as presented and seeks to partner with DTMR to develop and present options about heavy vehicle routes around Kingroy for discussion with stakeholders as part of our 22-23 operational plan. Do we have a mover? Councillor Jones, seconded Councillor Duff. Speakers, Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Just happy to continue these conversations as we will be all part of that. We have an issue, obviously, with heavy vehicles coming through the centre of town, Kingroy, getting across the Swickers in particular. I just want to make note that even though we to develop present options about heavy vehicle routes around Kingroy for discussion and these roads that are mentioned, I personally don't think this is our best route, and I'm going to work very hard to try and get alternate routes, because keeping in mind that we have more predicted residential lots and all that sort of stuff starting. So I just want to make note that this is not our only option that we'll be discussing. Yes, it will be one, but there is other options that I think could be just as significant, if not better.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Erkins.
Forgive me if this is not relevant, but I just thought I would inform the council that when you put an address in, if you're coming from Nanango and you put an address in for anything that is north of Kingroy, your GPS actually takes you via Redmonds Road and doesn't bring you through Kingroy, which, to attract tourists, I don't know how you address that, but I think that would have an impact on people actually coming through and stopping at the town, which is, sort of goes against what you want. So it's probably not relevant to this, but I just thought of that when you're saying.
We'll take note of that. Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, thank you. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess it is certainly something that definitely needs work. I know there's been a lot of work done to date. I think it's really important, as Councillor Jones has said, that we continue this work and that we bring the right stakeholders to the table and really take a good look at our network and how to limit heavy vehicles through our CBD. I know we've been blessed in Kingroy with industries that really are the heart and soul of our industry, of our community. They employ a lot of people. They put a lot back into our community, and I think we need to do what we can to have them at the table. support them to continue their operations, but certainly to support the wellbeing and livelihoods of the people who live in Kingroy and around Kingroy and the South Burnett. So just want to thank the team for bringing this to the table and the work that will continue. Certainly very keen to continue to be involved and support however I can.
Further speakers? Councillor Jones to close. We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 11.6, detailed information around unformed roads that have existing residential landholders who have made inquiries to council. That's at 323, where there is a recommendation that South Burnett Regional Council reclassify Whelan Street and Millards Road as formed roads and undertake formation and maintenance works as part of the 22-23 works program, and that a report be brought to the capital budget deliberations for 22-23 as preliminary estimated costs of formation grading on the remaining roads listed as attachment 4, updated to include any further roads that customers have submitted requests. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff. Seconder? We have a seconder. Councillor Erkins. Thank you. Speakers, Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm really keen to see this happen. I'm really keen to see Whelan Street included in the formed roads and Millards Road. The residences live along both those roads, and Whelan Street, I brought it to the chamber some time ago and was very disappointed at the outcome, but it got pushed to this debate. I believe that Whelan Street is a formed road in any case, because I have had evidence then, and I tabled it back then, that the CEO, Alan Keats, the former CEO of Wandai Shire Council, had sent me an email to say that that road was included in the grading program back in the Wandai Shire days. And I also have had a letter from a doctor, the lady who lives at the bottom end of Whelan Street has one kidney, and the doctor was concerned that the ambulance during wet weather couldn't get in there. And so that was also the evidence I put forward on that day, and I'm putting that evidence forward again. And I was so embarrassed about the fact that we had chosen not to grade that road that I actually got I was going to pay for it myself. I had the CEO send me a application to do work myself, but somebody, and who will remain nameless, has actually gone in there and done a little bit of work to just make it safe, which I was so embarrassed about that we had to do that. So Whelan Street I'm 100% passionate about, and I believe Millards Road falls into that same category. The other thing that I'm really keen to see is what's at this going through all of the unformed roads, because that supports all our rural people. Because over the years we've had, and all of the councils would have had it, that little bit of road that they believe should get them to the cattle yards or get them to their grain bin. This is an opportunity to have a look, not necessarily do it, but at least have a look at all of these unformed roads and make a decision on them, because at the moment they're in abeyance. Everybody's waiting to see what happens with this, but if we go through and look at each one of them, we'll be supporting our rural people. And I think sometimes they say, what do they get for their rates? Well, how about we look at maybe just getting to their cattle yards? We're agricultural region, so that would make a huge difference to some of those. The perception of our council, if we just, usually it's only just a little bit of road, and that could make such a difference. So I'm just really keen to see this motion supported. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor
Potter.
Thank you, Mr. I'll actually be voting against this one, even though I voted it for with this, because I've done some thinking on this one, and Mr Mayor, and I really don't think we should be, in Councillor Duff's words, picking and choosing roads. They're the words she used earlier in discussing Burt Road, and I think that it's something we should all sit down together and look at all the list of roads, because once we start putting roads onto our roads register, we're going to end up with hundreds of kilometres of road that we haven't budgeted for, that we haven't, that we're going to have to then depreciate. So it's not just 2 roads for now, Mr Mayor, it's going to be a lot more than that. So this is a huge picture we have to look at, and not just pick and choose roads we want.
Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I won't be supporting this either, and the reasons being, first of all, we don't have a policy in place. We haven't Haven't had any discussions. Whelan Street, we dealt with Whelan Street. The gentleman required a sign basically for emergency services to know where the road is. I was involved with Millards Road as well, and Millards Road wasn't a road surface issue as such. It was more a boundary or entry to blocks and that sort of stuff as well. And there was already an existing sign on Millards Road, and I'm happy to be corrected by the CEO on this one, but Millards Road was a boundary and entry point, if I'm correct.
Mr. CEO, if you have information, thank you.
Sorry.
No, you're right. Thanks, Mayor. Through you, Mayor. Millards, there was entry and access through boundaries were the issue. There wasn't an existing sign, and we put the pole and the sign on Millards.
Thank you. So the sign was put there basically to acknowledge where somebody lived. When we first discussed this, there was 18 kilometres of road came back as the roads that were identified. I've had significant conversations with a lot of people over a long period of time in my time in council since 2016 that I haven't put in a custom request in regards to the roads, because I was having the conversation with the people. I'd spoken to staff and they said that they're not on our asset register, and at this stage we don't maintain them. So Galampa Road down at Blackbutt, Staines Road in Blackbutt. Now Staines Road has a significant impact. If there was a fire to start down on Bowman Road, for instance, there is a huge amount of people that have nowhere else to go bar Staines Road to get away from a fire if it breaks. So there's one that's significant. Upper Barkers Creek, the councillor Henson and myself were speaking to landowners up there only on Saturday, telling us that, they can't get their cattle trucks. And the councillor just mentioned that, the rural people. There is significant. I can't think of the name now, but another rural landowner, significant landowner, older, from out at Cumbia Way. He also, it's Upper Barkers Creek is closer to Cumbia. The next one down, I can't think of the name of it. Ellesmere Road, just off Ellesmere Road, there's another road that goes down off Cumbia Road. Had that conversation. These are all significant lengths of road. Speaking to a couple of people here, Mr. Mayor, at Smoko. Tim Dwyer Road in the Nango. We don't maintain that. We've got people living down there. Dangor Mountain Road, Nanga Road. Significant amount of roads that add up to a lot of distance. Considering I don't have a policy, I can't support these two roads. There is significant other roads. In the conversation we had, we need to look at them all because others may need work prior to the ones that we've got listed here. So I won't be supporting this today.
Councillor Erkins, and then we'll go to Councillor Shoemaker.
I've actually had a request from somebody in Nanango on 18 Appin Street. They have no main road. Apparently they had been speaking to Councillor Froloff previously, but I don't know where that was up to, but they have no access into their property. And I was just telling Councillor Jones that I also had a phone call this morning from some people who live on a service road on the Diagonal Highway across from the caravan park as you go out of town. And there's a service road there that apparently about 5 residents have used that service road. So what she said to me was she's been given the runaround between council and main roads as to who actually is responsible for that road, but she said it's pretty, dangerous at the moment. I mean, a lot of these roads at the moment that are difficult to get into at the moment, with all this rain, when they dry up and people drive on them, they become better. However, if you have a heart attack and it's raining, it's not easy to, justify whether it was a rainy, boggy road or it was a dry and trafficable road. But there are other roads that are important.
Okay. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you. Sorry. Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am in support of this motion. I have spoken to it before. I actually think from the detail that we'd received earlier this month in the Standing Committee meeting on the 4th of May around unformed roads, that This clearly isn't a new problem. I completely understand and respect that there are hundreds of kilometres of potential paper reserves and potential road reserves that we don't fully understand. But from the information that I've been given, there are 18 kilometres that are in the system. 18 kilometres of unformed road reserves that residents of the region every day are trying to traverse. And we know about them. There've been problems since 2014, and we know that there've been a problem since 2014. It's now 2022. I'm not willing to not do nothing. I would like to see us start somewhere. I know there's been extensive conversations about these two roads. I think the concerns raised are they're warranted. And whilst I understand, the apprehension to increase our road network, because as has been pointed out here this morning, we are struggling to maintain our 3,000 kilometres of road in the area. I'd also like to point out that we are chipping away at some of these things. We are spending extensive amounts of council's budget every year on our roads portfolio, and I believe that everybody has a right to access to their property, and the issues that were created because of developers many years ago, councils that were willing to turn a blind eye and not develop roads because, they needed the growth. I completely respect and understand that. But these people are paying rates, they are contributing to our community, and I do think that we should really take a look at these and start somewhere. And I think this is a good place to start. I don't think it ends here. I don't think we're making a premise that we're going to get across every road in the first year. It's very similar to the things we've talked about before, where there'll have to be a policy, there'll have to be a strategy, we'll have to chip away at it. We can't simply afford to do it all at once. But I do think we need to start somewhere, and I would like to see us start here. I think we need to listen to the people who have raised concerns and see what we can do to help. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councillor Erkins, you just need to take your light off. Just your light there. Thanks, Councillor Erkins. Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly appreciate all the councillors' comments on these particular roads. I didn't support it previously, and I'm not going to support it now simply because, as much as there might be 18 kilometres of road in the system at the moment, I can mention two in Division 6 that total 18 kilometres straight up. We'd be looking at hundreds upon hundreds. They were obviously taken off council's register a long time ago. In relation to Whelan Street is a beautiful little street that's been maintained by the residents there. To bring that into formation maintenance works would be such a disappointment, because they mow that side of that road and there's two little wheel tracks up there, and yes, I can understand in certain weather conditions there's issues there. To see that being made a formation road would be, in my opinion, just seriously detrimental to the longevity of that road, because at the moment it is attractive, and the residents there that live up Whelan Street do a great job to maintain it, and I can appreciate the gentleman's concerns at the end of it, and we all know in relevant conversations had there, that not necessarily sway what we as a council propose to do. So I'm not going to support that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, am I able to foreshadow the motion?
Yes, you can, Councillor.
Can I move that we put a policy around this and do some framework in regards to the work that we've just finished before morning tea and the conversations we've had about people not knowing the situation, not knowing everything, and working out priorities and all that sort of stuff. Can I put a foreshadow a motion that we work together on a policy and identify the priorities, considering exactly what we've just done with the LRCI funding just before morning tea?
We have that as presented on screen, Councillor.
council work together on a policy and identify the priorities for future upgrades of roads that are currently not on our asset register to being on our register, something along those. Sorry.
If you could
Happy
just,
for any contribution towards that motion.
okay, I think we've got the general intent there. Thank you. We'll take that. Councillor Duff, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, I'm supportive of this motion because the Whelan Street debate, we waited and they've been waiting and waiting and waiting until this May meeting, because as I said that it's being put on hold until we look at all of the unformed roads, which we've had a presentation back to council of the unformed roads that have been listed. And I'm very, very concerned that if there is a road in Deputy Mayor Jones's area where there's a safety issue, that needs to be on the list as well. But as Councillor Shoemaker said, this needs to start somewhere, and today is a good day to start. And as part of that, we can certainly look to form a policy. But that Whelan Street, and with all due respect, those people that live along Whelan Street have not maintained that road. They argued, they came to me and said, can we get something done to that road? And there was a big area where the ambulance could not get in and they needed to get it gravelled up. It's not, the grass is not what, and that patch is not what they want. They wanted it done so that it's for safety reasons. And it's a street in the village of Highsville. We've been talking about perhaps bitumening some other roads when we've got a street in the village of Highsville that council doesn't even maintain, with residences living along it, and one who is seriously sick with one kidney. So I am just so passionate about getting, at the very least, Whelan Street done. But I just can't believe that you wouldn't want to look at all of these, particularly as on the back of what Deputy Mayor Jones has said, a safety issue where there's only one way out. That's the kind of stuff we need to be looking at. So this starts, like Councillor Shoemaker said, the conversation has to start somewhere. So I believe it should be today. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the debate. Let's go to the vote. Those in favour? Councillor Shoemaker, Councillor Erkins, Councillor Duff and Councillor Otto. Those against? Councillor Jones, Councillor Potter and Councillor Henson. The motion has been carried 4 votes to 3. Thank you all. Mr CEO, in terms of the foreshadowed motion, how should we deal with that now?
Oh, you don't, Mayor, it lapses.
Thank you. Okay, the foreshadowed motion has lapsed. So we will move on to 11.7, George Street Car Park, Kingroy, concept design. Now that is at page 324, where it's recommended that council adopt the concept design for the George Street Car Park and make allowance for additional $75,000, 10% from LRCI Phase 3 in cost escalation due to the impact of current construction, industry inflation. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker. Seconded, Councillor Potter. Speakers, Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I really do feel this project is a game changer for the CBD of Kingroy. If you were to drive up there today after the rain that we've had over the weekend, you would see that people are parking their cars to try to preserve on-street parking. Business owners in the street and operators are parking their cars in giant puddles of mud and of water, and they're uneven. And to be honest, I think at high risk of being bogged in the area. They're doing that because they operate businesses and they want their customers to be able to use the parking out front. And I feel this project is really important for the business houses in the CBD. I think it's important because there are young hairdressers working in the street who are currently parking their cars in the dark out the back of their premises, and they're going back on a Thursday night after they've worked until 10 o'clock at night in the dark, petrified. I think car parks like this will make an enormous difference to their personal safety and the way they feel about working late into the night. I think I'd like to commend the infrastructure team. I have had my boots on the ground with Councillor Potter, Councillor Jones, yourself, Mayor Otto. We've been up there, we've had a look for ourselves, we've talked with commercial business operators, and we've tried to find a happy medium with the design and the plan, the concept design that will work for everybody, that will support their operations, and I think that's a great outcome. I also would just like to close that we do need to recognise with projects like these, commercial ratepayers in our street here in Kingroy pay enormous amounts of rates. They've had, yes, I accept that those buildings and shops, some of them were built many years ago, and there was not a need or a provision for putting on-street parking in when you built a premises back then. The reality is that's the situation now. We have businesses in the street who need parking for their customers. I had one just in tears on Friday talking to me about this very problem. I'm fully supportive of this motion. I think it will make an enormous difference, and I commend the motion to the chamber.
Further speakers? Councillor Reckons.
I think it's true to Mr Mayor. It's a well-known fact that I'm very negative about the Kingroy project. However, in saying that, it's well underway and we've got to go with it. But my concern is that this is another $75,000 on top of the money that has been allocated to do that. And I just don't know when are these increases going to stop, because I think it needs to, you've got to work within a budget, and if the budget's going up, maybe you've got to cut down on some things to allow it to happen, because I just don't think that I'm happy to just keep putting money in and money in and money in, and I don't think the ratepayers are either.
Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. That's exactly why we need to move on this. The longer we wait, it's a necessity. It's a contributing factor to the KTP, and Councillor Erkins is entitled to her opinion, but this just needs to be done. We need to get on with it. The longer we wait, the longer or the more likely, as we know, material costs are going up. Our steel costs are only good, or quotes are only good for 24 hours these days. So the longer we wait, the more it's going to cost. It needs to be done. It's a significant contribution to the overall complexity of the KTP. It's going to replace the car parks that have been taken out of the streets with the upgrade. And just a little bit of useless information, using Councillor Henchin's terminology, people that say that the George Street car park will be a significant distance to walk, I have been given it on good authority from a former businessman that if you go down and park underneath the shopping centre and walk from underneath that up to the front door of Woolies, you will walk just as far as what you will from that proposed car park into the town. So I'll just leave it at that, fully supportive of this motion moving forward.
Okay, Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I'm not supporting this increase of $75,000, which again comes off the LRCI Phase 3, which will come off roads, resealing, all those opportunities we have to do more work in the broader region. I supported the initial money for the Kingroy Transformation Project, and then I voted against the extra over $3 million, and then it's blowing out more and more and more, and a lot of that money, I believe, could have been used to do reseals on our rural or outlying roads across our region. So I'm thinking the same as Councillor Erkins, that we need to cut our cloth according to what we can afford, and I think we need to stay within budget on this, so I won't be supporting it. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll definitely be supporting this because you can't half do a job. End of story. Thank you.
Okay, further speakers? Councillor Henchin.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker, for bringing to the attention the safety of not only our business people, but the patronage from our locals within that CBD area. It also, it's not just about the CBD, but I would believe that this car park lends itself immensely to the rail trail and users of the rail trail as well. Hasn't been mentioned, but I think if we want to talk safety in relation to our residents, and it was just brought up in the previous agenda item, I think this is certainly a no-brainer for our business owners and our residents of our community. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Shoemaker for closing comments. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just think, yes, absolutely, there are pressures on our operations that are currently out of our control. Absolutely. And the reality is there are pressures on every small business, medium-sized and large-sized business across Australia at the moment that are out of our control. Absolutely. I am a big believer in setting a budget and working to it. And this is an instance where we've done the homework, we've realised up front that this project is going to cost more, and we've been realistic in making allowances for that. I would like to point out in closing that this project is, as Councillor Henson said, a big one in terms of adding to the return on investment of our rail trail infrastructure. By going forth with this project, we're enabling a safe space for caravanners and tourists and cyclists to park in Kingroy, to park in town, and furthermore encouraging them by all means to use the rail trail, but to come into town and access our businesses. And with that, bring new money into town, which really, really will be important to our local economy into the future. I think it's a winner. It's going to create a space that's safe for people to access our rail trail. It's going to create a space that's safe for local business and for local residents. If they turn around the corner there, they can easily park up behind King Street and still access town. And I know that's important to businesses, because if you drive past today because you can't get a park and you think that, well, I'll come back and do that tomorrow. Well, the reality is their doors may not be open tomorrow. We absolutely need to provide parking so that residents are going and accessing the shops in the street and creating a really lively CBD that supports the livability of our residents. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I commend this motion to the chamber.
Thank you, councillors. We'll now go to the vote. Those in favour? Councillor Shoemaker, Councillor Erkins, Councillor Jones, Councillor Potter and Councillor Henson. Those against? Councillor Duff and Councillor Otto. The motion has been carried 5 votes to 2. Thank you all. Okay, we'll move on now to 11.8, which is application for the surrender of a permit to occupy western portion of Peabory Road, Mergen. Now that's at 325, whereby the recommendation is that South Burnett Regional Council advise the applicant and the Department of Natural Resources and Mines that it accepts the application for surrender of the current permit to occupy for the portion of Peabory Road that runs along the eastern boundary of Lot 148 FY268 and through Lot 171 FY2461 as shown in Attachment 1. Should the Department of Natural Resources and Mines approve the surrender of the permit to occupy, that there be no cost to council associated with the change, and delegates authority under Section 257 of the Local Government Act 2009 to the Chief Executive Officer or their delegate to finalise any and all matters associated with the application, execute as Road Manager Form Part C statement in relation to an application under the Land Act 1994 over state land for the proposed surrender of the permit to occupy. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, seconded. Councillor Duff. Speakers? To the vote? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 11.9, review of request for speed hump on Edward Street, Wandai at 327. Now again, from the committee discussions and debate, it has been recommended that council notes the report and the speed limit on Edward Street, Wandai remains at 50 kilometres per hour with no modifications to the profile of the street. Do we have a mover? Councillor Henson, thank you. Seconded. Councillor Potter. Speakers? To the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 11.10, urgent pothole repair, 39 Boat Mountain Road, Mergen at 328, whereby from the committee meeting it has been recommended that the pothole on 39 Boat Mountain Road, Mergen, be fixed as a matter of urgency due to community safety concerns. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, seconded by Councillor Henson. Speakers, Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In between now and the meeting before and this one, I think the pothole's been done, but yeah, really happy to endorse this. Thank you.
Further speakers. Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thanks through you, Mr Mayor. I just want to justify the pothole in discussion here was fixed the day after we had the standing committee meeting, but my comments in regards to someone or one of our staff members going out and putting coal mix into it that was possibly refuted and said that that didn't happen. It did happen, and they did respond. I just want to acknowledge the staff for responding very quickly, and there was a process and it followed due process with everything else that we do in council as far as potholes and all that sort of stuff reporting it, but was fixed the very next day, and they've done a good job.
Thank you, Councillor. Further speakers. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I guess with this one, absolutely fully supportive. We absolutely need to be fixing potholes as a matter of urgency, no matter what road they're on. I know particularly at the moment, there's a lot of regions struggling with this. I come back from the Fraser Coast after some training on the weekend, and my goodness me, there are some giant issues there. I feel this is going to be a major problem for local governments across the state with the incredible amount of rain that we've received. I guess my main concern here is that Councillor Duff raised it in a council meeting, and I understand that she'd put in customer requests and things about this, is my understanding. However, my concern is that this really isn't proper process, that the role of a councillor is about setting the strategic direction of the organisation, not getting down into the nitty-gritty of the operations. And so I will by all means endorse this as I did at the last standing committee meeting, but if there is an issue here with the process that's undertaken, I guess I want to understand that more. And the reality is, we know from the workshop that we've recently done, we've got a significant backlog of issues that the team are working really hard to resolve at the moment. And I guess I'm just very mindful of how these things get elevated and our time here in the council chamber. And I'm not sure discussing exact specific potholes is a good use of our time. I think there's systems here that possibly need some review and attention. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Further speakers? I think further. We'll go back to Councillor Duff then for closing comments. Thank you, Councillor.
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, the reason I raised this particular pothole was because of the reputational damage to council and the fact that it had been already put in into as a customer request. It had been raised by the Murgon Business and Development Association as a serious safety issue. Weeks went by. I went out and had a look at the pothole, and there was no, the business community actually had put their own witch's hat on there, and someone had removed it. The sign was on the wrong side of the road, so I raised it because it was at a committee meeting to raise a red flag on the process. That's what I was doing. So that's why it came to the chamber, and I'm very grateful that the pothole got done, but it was certainly more than just the pothole. It was the actual lead up and the reputational damage that was around that pothole. Thank you.
Let's go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 11.11, permanent job to fix pothole on Bunya Highway, 500 metres past Sherburgh turnoff, northbound at 329, where from the committee debate it has been recommended that main roads be contacted and a permanent job be done to fix the pothole on the Bunya Highway, approximately 500 metres past the Sherburgh turnoff, northbound. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, seconded Councillor Jones. Speakers, Councillor Duff,
So through
yours.
Mr Mayor, thank you again. This is a similar issue. However, this is a main roads one, and this pothole was reported back in November, and it was fixed, and then it was reported by Senior Sergeant Brett Everest again to me in January, and then it was fixed, and then it came back again, and it was reported by Senior Sergeant Brett Everest again. It came back, the pothole was fixed, and it was brought back. We actually, the Murgon Business Development Association, we actually started to call it the Everest pothole. So it's back there again. It's a safety issue. It's right in the middle of a main road, and so motion here is to actually ask Main Roads to actually have it done properly. So, and I think that's process is in train, so thank you.
Further speakers? Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Again, this was put in a process that the council operates under, and it is in the works program. And look, I'm not underselling the safety issues of this particular pothole, but God almighty, we have got significant potholes right across our region, and we cannot be expecting our staff to drop everything and run to somebody else's request when they have so many other things. And who's to say that the potholes and that they've got in the process already are not more significant than the one that we're speaking about here. We have a process, the staff are doing the best they possibly can. The Councillor Shoemaker has, through you, Mayor, has identified coming home from the Fraser Coast. I can assure you, I'm talking to all our significant neighbours, Sunshine Coast included, Brisbane. They are getting hammered, absolutely hammered about potholes. And if there's any positive coming out of it, the good thing is the South Burnet's not the only council that has to deal with potholes. It's right across the whole place, wherever it's been wet. But I just think that we need to understand that there's a process. The staff are doing the best they possibly can with the equipment they've got and the funding they have, and they have to go through Main Roads and all that sort of stuff. And I'm not saying that it's not a significant safety issue, but by God, there'd be some significant safety issues that the staff have already identified and to put through. So happy to put it up and just process through the meeting.
Councillor Shoemaker, thank you. We'll go to Councillor... Oh, you first? Who was first? Okay, Councillor Erkins, go ahead. Thank you. Councillor Erkins, thank you.
We have a policy for how tall the grass grows before you can cut it. Maybe we can have a policy for how deep the pothole is before it's considered dangerous.
Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I guess just further to Councillor Duff's comments, I have a question for General Manager Lowe, just in terms of a pothole this size and this significant, and I know because I have hit it myself, why would it keep re-emerging like that on a main highway?
Acting General Manager, thank you.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Large variety of reasons, but generally those type of failures need a proper dig out, and hence why it's been temporarily patched as a holding measure until they can actually get into the program of you just don't bring out a machine just to dig out one hole. You've got to do up a program to get economies of scale. And so that's exactly what's happened with this. I can advise that this is on the dig out program, which is commencing very shortly. If not, it has already started. So it is actually on that list for a permanent dig out and repair.
Thank you,
With
Mr
you,
Mayor.
Councillor
Just
Shoemaker.
one more supplementary question. Just in terms of that dig out program and repair, I guess I just wanted to understand council system. So if I logged a inquiry today about a pothole on a main road, how would that process through to actually getting on that dig out program eventually? What does the time frame and what does that process look like?
Through you, Mayor. I'm not totally across the proper system here, but basically you log a defect the same as any CRM for a pothole. They go and assess it, and if they'll put in some temporary patch measures, see how they work. If it keeps on reoccurring, then they've got to escalate it. They've also confined by their RMPC budgets, etc. So Kevin's got to manage that as the whole unit for the year. So hence why he generally gets the dig out program is in the latter part of the year. So he sort of really knows what his current budget position is, because if he went and did that at the beginning of front loaded at the beginning of the year, he could actually easily run out of funding. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you for the clarification. I think that's really just good for us to know as a council that, yes, while you might put a pothole request in on a main road and you may see this re-emerging and happening, that the team behind the scenes is certainly doing the work to advocate and to try to find the money to fix it. So, yeah, no, I do appreciate the further clarification. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Further speakers? Councillor Duff for closing comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just, in closing, I would just like to ask the question then, if that is the case. So then if a pothole has been 3 times put in and brought back, then what is the process for a councillor who is being embarrassed by, at Business and Development Association meetings, embarrassed by having, you know, like a senior sergeant of police saying, you know, this is just, why do I keep doing that? What is the process for me to get it elevated if I don't take it to a committee meeting to be looked at as a permanent fix as opposed to just a quick fix? And that would be my conclusion.
Thank you, Councillor. Yep.
Statement. Thank you.
Acting General Manager.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. My advice to all councillors, if the situation is getting elevated, take it to our General Manager of Works or the Works Manager. They're the people that can elevate it. So quite free to contact us.
Thank you, Acting General Manager. Mr. CEO, did you want to add anything further to that in terms of our CRM process?
Two separate issues, Mayor. As far as our CRM and our controlled roads and the TMR network, to help answer Councillor Duff's question, actually, Senior Sergeant, that advocacy from the Senior Sergeant directly to TMR helps us no end. So we can feed information up and then develop a program. But if for whatever reason, if TMR, and certainly no negativity in this comment, but if TMR decides that road's not a priority for whatever reason, we have as much trouble as anyone else. So Senior Sergeant, if the frustration is there, go straight to TMR. That will come back to us, which is a fine thing because they'll flick it back down. But certainly any advocacy in that space, direct to the Bundaberg, it'll be the Bundaberg office, I would think. But anyway, yeah, so we would be able to, certainly if councillors have misplaced, or particularly with Councillor Erkin's new, there would be a complaints line, and yeah, always appreciate that support, particularly for the TMR network.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Okay, Councillor Duff.
Thank you.
Anything further?
No
Final?
further. Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for that feedback. I will endeavour to, next time to try and get the Senior Sergeant to push it through a different process through the, thank you.
Okay, that concludes the debate. We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Council, there is a late item, 11.12, which is has been provided. It relates to the consideration of accepting property access on Kingroy Kooyar Road, Toorong. The recommendation from the committee meeting is that South Burnett Regional Council 1, accepts the service road providing access to lots 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7 on RP 178853 Kingroy Kooyar Road, Toorong as a council asset and adds the asset to council's road register. 2, accepts maintenance liability of the service road and provides written advice to impacted landholders. And 3, considers any capital improvements required as part of its 22-23 annual capital budget considerations. Do we have a mover? A mover? Yep. Councillor Shoemaker. Secondly, Councillor Jones. Speakers, Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know this was discussed extensively at the committee meeting. I am supporting this motion. I know I drove past this very service road for many years. I have driven up it. I know its condition. And I also know I have seen for many years in my travels out to Toorong, kids waiting on the side of that service road for their bus. And it was a very busy spot every morning and every afternoon. I think this is another example of us trying to chip away at some of these long-standing problems in our community. I don't think there is any easy fix. And I think it's important that really we try something, and if it doesn't work or it becomes a problem, we learn something, you move on and you keep going. And I guess that's what I'd really like to see this council do. Instead of sort of recognising a problem like this and saying, well, we'll just have to wait, try to tackle them, try to do something differently. I know sometimes that's going to work and sometimes that's not, but I do think we have to start somewhere. And yes, I'm very supportive of this motion. Thank you.
Further speakers? No. Shall we go to the vote? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, we're now up to section 12, which is Community Arts, Heritage, Sport and Rec, where we have one item, 12.1, in-kind support, Bacon Fest 2022. That's at, where are we, 3:30? And from the committee meeting, it is recommended, get to the right page here. It's recommended that council approve the requested in-kind assistance in the 2020 to the 2022 Bacon Fest, subject to available resources. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker, seconded Councillor Duff. Speakers, Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I just wanted to point out that tickets are currently on sale. If you haven't already got your tickets for Bacon Fest, please do. There's a full suite of events, family-friendly events and activities on the agenda. And I think the reason why I am really supportive of this in-kind support application is the fact that this festival is such an economic driver for our region. And that's felt from all ends of our region. I know myself, a number of family members and friends travelling from Brisbane for the event especially, who will not be able to drive past the Black Butt Bakery without grabbing a coffee and a pie. And I imagine it's very much the same from the Gameri and Mergen end and all corners of our region, that people will come together for the Bacon Fest Festival. I think it's a giant event and a huge economic driver for our region. And I really do hope that those funds, that businesses are doing what they can to really promote their offerings in the lead up to the festival, because I do think tourists and visitors are looking for that. There's an enormous evidence around event tourism, and this festival is certainly one of those major attractions for our region. So really looking forward to the festival. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Erkins.
Could I just ask, is there a figure for that, or what type of figure are we talking?
Mr CEO, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. The figure is we've booked in an appointment on Friday afternoon, again a regular appointment with the committee. So as per the committee report was the full list of items they're requesting. We're going through to see what and what we can't do, and we'll be able to bring a figure back once we finalise what. There may be some, just without committing prior to, but there may be an item that they've asked for. There's one I'm thinking of, the forklift. That may be, we may have a forklift, but we may not have an operator. So, yeah, so the reason that there's been no number, we've actually now got to go through that list. This will give us the head of power. If council said no, well, that would have been a waste of a conversation. We'll go through that list, identify what we actually have on available, and then we can bring back the number from there.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I'm fully supportive of this. I think it is a huge economic driver, as are lots of events across our region. But yeah, really supportive of this. Hope it continues on into the future. And I just really keen for council to bend over backwards and help where they can with in-kind support. I just think, yeah, 100% supportive of this motion. Thank you.
Further speakers? Yes, Mr CEO, thank you.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, through you, Chair, just to clarify too, and Councillor Duff raises a good point, there is no cash. Everything is in kind.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Councillor Shoemaker, concluding comments. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I did just want to point out, Councillor Duff's very right. You know, these festivals don't happen without the hard work and effort of many volunteers that put in an enormous amount of time and effort to make it happen. And I know I've watched them during previous festivals, and by the end of the weekend, they're absolutely exhausted. And I guess I can see that our role as a council is really to be part of our community and to support. And I think I absolutely agree with Councillor Duff's sentiment around in-kind support. Often, sometimes just turning up and doing a little bit of heavy lifting can make a big difference for those volunteers who give so much. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. That concludes the debate. We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 13.1. Motion in relation to annual weed program. That's at 3:31, where the committee has recommended that South Bennett Regional Council begin the process of preparing tender arrangements for council's annual weed program, such that where possible, all suitably qualified contractors be given the opportunity to tender, with a view to having a contract based on separable portions for targeted programs, and a report be brought to the July Community Standing Committee meeting. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, seconded Councillor Henson. Speakers, Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I was the driver behind this actual motion, really keen to support it. It was on the back of some of the comments that Councillor Henson said, that we could probably do things a bit more efficiently if we had local contractors as opposed to just one contract for the whole of our weed spraying program. So just really keen to see it broken up and to give our local contractors a chance to put forward tenders. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, thank you, Councillor Duff. As discussed, I think this is a great step forward in being able to put this out, but in noting there in the recommendation that contract based on separable portion for targeted programs, and we know now in the South Burnett we have Parthenium, which will be, I believe, a specific targeted approach to the control of that. So I think this is a step in the right direction here. Yep.
Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Fully supportive of this one. I do believe Council has a core role in reducing the spread of weeds wherever we can. We are very much an agricultural community, and I think it'll be exciting to take a look at this one and look at the potential opportunities to do things a little bit differently, because certainly reducing the spread of those weeds does have a direct impact to the agricultural performance of our region. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Duff, closing comments? Okay, that concludes the debate. We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 13.2, Coolabanya Sale Yards Working Group report at 3:32, where the recommendation is that the report be received and Council adopt the Coolabanya Sale Yards Working Group action plan as presented, and that the working group be invited to view recent capital works at Coolabanya Sale Yards. Do we have a mover? Councillor Henson, seconded Councillor Potter. Speakers, Councillor Henson. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, there's been some good work going on in this department along with Councillor Duff and certainly the relative parties involved out there, and this is a step forward out there. I think we'll see some great things progress out in the Coolabanya Sale Yards with the work that's been happening there, and it's certainly, as it states there, we'll be able to review in time what's going on out in the Coolabanya Sale Yards. So there's already been some good work done out there, and there's a lot of work to do, as we know that. So it's been good to be able to work hand in hand with the agents out there and with the staff members as well. So this is certainly a step in the right direction, as the Coolabanya Sale Yards has desperately needed it.
Councillor Potter.
Oh, you mean Councillor Potter?
Potter, yes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. With regards to this, I just want to see if they've got the working group being invited to view the recent capital works. I do believe it should be the whole of council, because we have done a lot of work out there, and I know since some council, especially with especially with Councillor Erkins on board, I think it's something that she really needs to see as well. So I think all councillors should be going to this, and moving forward, what we're doing with the working group is really good with some of the action plans we've got moving forward. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Mr CEO, in relation to our process, are we able to provide invitations to all councillors to attend those meetings? Thank you. Yeah. Okay, further speakers? Councillor Henson, any closing comments?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. No, certainly welcome participation with all councillors. This is a major asset that council owns. So as previously, there's a lot of work to do in this space, and it's been coming along nicely in the last 6 months. And if we can progress at that race, I'm sure we will turn that Coolabanya Sale Yards around. And who knows, in an event of BBRF funding down the track, we could have a wonderful facility that's wonderful now, but it's certainly only got one way to go, and that's up.
We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 14.1, appointment of chairperson LDMG at 3:33. Recommendation is that South Burnett Regional Council, pursuant to Disaster Management Act 2003, Council appoint a chair, Councillor Danita Potter, and Deputy Chair, Deputy Mayor Gavin Jones, for the South Burnett Local Disaster Management Group, LDMG, and pursuant to Disaster Management Act 2003, Council appoint a chair, Councillor Kathy Duff, and Deputy Chair, Councillor Scott Henshin, for the South Burnett Local Recovery Management Group. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, seconder. Councillor Jones. Councillor Potter to speak first.
No, thank you, Mr Mayor. I think we've had enough discussion with this during the last meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Erkins.
I just wonder why the mayor's not on the, are we talking the chairperson for the, oh, sorry, I might be on the wrong page.
The LDMG, yeah.
No, sorry. Yeah, the local disaster management. Yeah, I just wonder why the mayor is not on that committee.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. I'm not sure how to answer that, but anyway, the process is one whereby I think at the committee meeting it was determined that Councillor Potter would be the chair and Councillor Jones the deputy chair. So, yeah. Anything further? Yeah, we'll start with you, Councillor Erkins. You still got your light on, but then we'll go across. Anything further?
No, it just
Okay.
seems strange.
Yes, okay. Anything further? Councillor Henshin?
No, I just, part of it, when it was discussed at a standing committee, Councillor Potter was the deputy chair previously, so stepped up to the chair, and we have Deputy Mayor Jones there to fulfil that position. So, yeah, that, Councillor Erkins, if that helps clarify your question.
Sorry, I just noticed that at other, I just went through to see what that was, and I noticed that in other regions, the mayor, the Fraser Coast and Toowoomba and Gympie, the mayor's always the contact person there.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. So the mayor is normally the chair of the LDMG. I certainly am contacted by, have historically over the last 2 years been invited to teleconferences with the Premier's office or Minister's offices where a disaster is occurring in our region. So yes, they will go to the mayor. The media will go to the mayor, and certainly the police heads will go to the mayor. In fact, I had a call from the police yesterday about a matter in the South Burnett, which wasn't disaster related, but was in relation to a campaign they have conducted across the region, and I'll be sharing that with councillors later in the day. So agencies do tend to come to the mayor, emergency services do, and it is important that, I suppose from my perspective, it's important that I do know what's happening with the disaster management group, that I'm appropriately informed, because otherwise I find myself sitting in a room full of mayors who are all chairs of LDMGs, and I'm the only one that's not. And sometimes I'm out of the loop with the information. So I think this is a discussion we had, Councillor Erkins, previously about making sure there's a proper communication process for the mayor to be appropriately informed. So Councillor Potter.
Well, actually, Mr Mayor, you've just basically said what I was going to say, that we're going to change our ways of communication, that we work together with the LDMG and yourself, and every councillor will be getting the minutes from the LDMG, which wasn't happening previously, and I still think that's very important. Any councillor can actually sit in on the LDMG meetings, and if you've got an issue to raise, you've just got to let us know and beforehand as well. But the mayor and I will be working a lot closer, I think, in the future with regards to the local disaster management group. And personally, I think the mayor's got enough on his plate. He's got a lot of other things he's got to be doing. So this is just one thing we can help lighten his load with.
Probably the only thing I would ask, Mr CEO, is that if the Premier gives me a direction, I need to be able to pass that direction to the LDMG. Now, last year we had a case, or recently we had a case where the Premier directed me to issue an alert to the region. She was supported by the Police Commissioner. And then because the district didn't, I then conveyed that to the LDMG, came to the meeting and asked them to issue a flood alert. The LDMG chose to make a decision not to do what I'd asked and not to follow the Premier's directions because they hadn't received that information from the district coordinator. That's my understanding. Now, if that happens, that could be catastrophic for us. So we do need to ensure, I feel, that where I pass on directives from the Premier's office or from the Police Commissioner or the Minister, that the LGMG does respond appropriately to that.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. That example is a good example of information coming down. There were other districts as well that didn't pass that on, and it's probably a very good offline conversation about the Premier and the Prime Minister's role, given the recent federal elections, about how the disaster management framework works, and the delicacy of it is the Premier, and you passed on in good faith, in absolute good faith, and it was a district level where there tended to be not issues, but issues. But yeah, so that information has to be conveyed through, absolutely, without hesitation. There has been a little bit of a changing of thought pattern at both the most senior levels of state and Commonwealth governments about how the framework works, and that would be a really wonderful offline conversation to have a chat about.
Thank you, Mr. Seover. We could just at least note that for future reference for the LDMG. That was certainly a breakdown somewhere in the system. Okay, anything further on this before we go back? Councillor Shoemaker, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I guess I'll listen to some of the feedback. I guess concern would be your availability to participate and attend LDMG meetings. I just wanted to understand how frequent they actually are outside of a disaster. How often do you actually meet, and how long does that take to meet outside of a disaster is a question I'd like clarified, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Councillor Potter, are you able to? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. When there's no disaster, we meet 4 times a year, but we also do training in amongst that time. And also during that time, with regards to, as well as the training we do with the QFES and Peter Harkin and everyone, we also sometimes do the face level training where we, I think last year's was the Gordon Brook Dam disaster that we did. We all sat in the room here and we did that, and that took, if I remember rightly, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Peter O'May, to General Manager O'May, I think we were in here nearly all day, I think, doing that particular work. Yeah, so that was a full day of evaluation and training with regards just doing a desktop analogy with regards to a disaster that may or may not happen. So it might only be 4 meetings a year, but there's a lot more than that we do.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. We'll stay with Councillor Shoemaker. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I guess, yeah, thank you for the clarification. I guess I'm thinking similarly that it's really important that we do have 2 people involved in the local disaster management group, and that they do turn up, they do that training, they do participate in the meetings, because I can see that would be critical at the time of a disaster. I guess, and in my experience in the past where I've done crisis comms and training, you know, nothing can diminish the value of an exercise and reviewing it and really going into the depth of it. I think so important in terms of preparing us for the next disaster. I guess, Mr. Mayor, listening to you would be guided by your thoughts in terms of your interactions during a disaster. Whether you would like to, rather than Councillor Jones sit as the deputy, whether you feel you can commit to those meetings and that training, if you would like to certainly be able to feed that through more directly, I guess just welcome to that. I'm open to that conversation. I think Councillor Potter has worked really hard and been a part of this for a long time, and I think it's a wonderful growth opportunity for her. She's certainly got a lot of relationships already, which does set us up for success. But I certainly do hear your comments around being able to engage directly with the committee. And yes, I guess I'm just keen to hear your thoughts if you feel you can commit to that rigorous training and those regular meetings, because I'd hate to see a situation where a disaster actually happened and because of your busy schedule you were unable to commit and we weren't prepared and on the same page. So I guess that's where my head is with this.
Look, if council, was of the mind that they think the mayor should be the LDMG chair, I'd agree. It's a very important space, and I'd have to make the time in my diary to commit to it and fulfil the role. It's one of those things that you just have to put at the top of the priority list. So thank you for the question, but I certainly would. I would have to make the time available to commit if that was the case. In terms of acting as the deputy, Mr. CEO, my understanding is under the Local Disaster Management Act that once, if council, if the LDMG go into stand-up, that there's certain delegated authority that then rests with the LDMG or the chair, which in some cases exceeds that of the mayor. I've been told by other mayors. Is that, maybe that's a question on notice, but there's certain powers that come with being the chair of the LDMG. I believe that can actually, well, I've been told by other mayors that can actually then override the chamber in that circumstances, which I'd imagine would be for good reasons, where you've got to make a decision quickly. I don't particularly have an issue with that, but it might just cause a little bit of a challenge in terms of if the mayor was the deputy, the mayor overshadowing or perhaps having information, not information, but overshadowing perhaps the chair. So I'd probably prefer not to be the deputy because I wouldn't want to compromise the chair's role there by my presence in the meeting. But I certainly would be keen to make sure that I'm properly briefed so that when I have those conferences that I'm invited into, that I can share that information. That's probably the key element here, I think, yeah. But anyway, we'll go to Councillor Jones and then Councillor Potter to wrap up as the mover. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I was quite happy with Councillor Shoemaker's suggestion. I'm more than happy to stand down as a deputy for you to take in or whatever it needs to be, and then you just blew me out the water with your comments just then. So I'm happy to stand down if there's any changes that need to be issued or made. So, yeah, don't feel bad about that.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. Let's wrap up. Councillor Potter, concluding comments and we'll go to the vote.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, this is a role I do feel passionate about, but I do feel that moving forward, you and I will work better together. We've had that discussion here in our last meeting when we were talking about the LDMG, and I do feel that things will be better moving forward with the way we've changed this, with regards to the email output for LDMG going to all the councillors, and, you and I have had that discussion. So I do feel quite comfortable with where we're sitting right now. Thank you.
Those in favour, yes. Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, now the next item is a petition from the students at the Wheatland State School. That's item 15.1 and is at 335, where it is recommended that South Bennett Regional Council advise students of Wheatland State School that their ideas for future recreation activities in the South Bennett has been investigated and discussed with PCYC Mergen. PCYC Mergen is not a suitable location for a trampoline centre and not a recreation activity, supported by PCYC Mergen. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff. Secondly, Councillor Potter. Thank you. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, unfortunately, we met with the PCYC and it can't be done. It's just the facility, they can't accommodate a trampoline park. Apparently it has to be a huge area and it doesn't work for them. It's also not something that the PCYC generally has in their buildings. So yeah, it's just not going to work. Wheatland School put forward that petition. It was wonderful that the students did that, but yeah, we just have to write back to them and just say it's not going to work at the PCYC. So it's not to say we can't look at something down the track in the future and somewhere else for trampoline park, but just not at the PCYC. Thank you.
Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Certainly, what I love about engaging with young people is they think very differently to the way any of us think, because they're not putting up all those boundaries or education or the reasons that tell you no, something's not a good idea. And they're putting ideas out into the universe and saying this is what's really important to us and this is what we think you should do. I think this is a wonderful demonstration of democracy, and I'm so grateful to see the Wheatland State School students actually come and sit in our council meeting chamber, present us with that petition, and to go away feeling like their voices are heard. I did speak at the committee meeting, and I think it's really important. What I would like to see us do is invite those students to, I understand for them to travel back, it's a huge impost with their schooling, but to invite them to a Teams meeting with council, to actually share their ideas. So if this idea is not going to work, the PCYC can't be a trampoline park, which I must admit I understand, but I am disappointed. That would have been wonderful. Could we have they got other ideas that warrant investigation? So I guess I would really like to see us take that as an action from this meeting, that we meet with them.
Thank you, councillor. Mr CEO.
Through you, Mayor Dunn. Out of the committee meeting, we've written, written back and advised him of the discussion out of the committee meetings and the committee resolution so that it doesn't come as a surprise. And in that letter, an invitation to represent to council with any new ideas they have.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Thank you, councillor. Okay, rightio. So anything in wrapping up, councillor Duff?
No, I just agree that, it's wonderful that the students saw fit to petition council, and that's a democratic process working wonderfully, and just great that they've got fire in their belly and wanting to be part of our region and making a difference. So, keen to meet with them again. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour, carried unanimously. Thank you all. The next item, 15.2, notice of motion to Kingroy Rail Trail Verge at 3:36, where from the committee debate, it's recommended that South Bennett Regional Council engage contractors within this financial year to complete the slashing, mowing and clearing of the verge area of the rail trail on the northern side within the 60-kilometre zone at Kingroy, and Parks and Garden staff then take on the project of selecting and planting an appropriate landscape of trees as part of a natural beautification project. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter. A seconder? Councillor Duff. Councillor Potter.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and actually thank you for bringing this forward, I think, because now every time I drive through Kingroy, I can't not see it. So I really do, so it's one of those things that until someone brings it to your attention, you don't actually notice it. So, no, this really needs doing. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, councillor. Further speakers? The only thing I'd probably say is if we can, Mr. CEO, if we can just engage with the community. There might be community members that are interested in that. I know we've got some here today. So if we can maybe just put a notice out to the community, letting them know that this work will be being done, and if anyone's got any thoughts to put those forward to council through the appropriate channels, and perhaps Councillor Henson and Councillor Duff might like to be involved as the divisional and portfolio councillors. Yeah. Okay. Any further speakers? Councillor Shoemaker. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Further to that, I do think it would be wonderful for our council to make contact with the Kingroy State School. If we are actually planting some trees, they very well may like to be involved in that process, and I'm certain that our councillors would certainly enjoy the opportunity. But I've seen many other schools engage in similar projects in other regions, and I think when you've planted a tree, you're more likely to take care of it and less likely to vandalise it. I just think it would be wonderful for our council to reach out to Kingroy School and see if they may be interested in being a part of those plantings.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. In light of that, which seems like a great idea, item 2, could we change that to say, and this is obviously subject to agreement from Councillor Potter and Councillor Duff, Parks and Gardens staff work with councillors and staff and students from Kingroy School to take on the project. Thanks, Bree. Councillor Potter? Comfortable with that? Councillor Duff? Thank you. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Jones.
Mayor, can we just put in there offer? Just offer to the, without that sort of sense that we're going to work with them. They may not want to do it. Can we just say that, can we offer it to them to be part or participate?
Yes. And yes. And offer staff and students from Kingroy School the opportunity, excuse me, Bree, the opportunity. Comfortable with that, Councillor Jones? Yep, good, thank you. Councillor Duff?
I just wanted to change the word to take on rather than the opportunity to be part of. I think it's probably more appropriate wording.
Okay, we comfortable with that? Right, for the speakers? We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Right, now we're going on to the next item. And I might ask to be excused. Councillor Jones, would you mind relieving me? I've got an awful tickle in my throat.
Okay, so we've just finished 15.2, haven't we? 15.3, Kingroy Aerodrome tender. So the committee recommend to council that South Burnett Regional Council delegate to the Chief Executive Officer the power to negotiate with Mr Peter O'Donnell under S 227228 of the Local Government Regulation 2012 to negotiate and enter into a licence to occupy for Area 21 located on Lot 3 on SP 249643 in accordance with the scope and specification of tender number SBRC 2122/11. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, seconder. Councillor Erkins, comments. Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We had a conversation in relation to this particular space some week or two ago in a standing committee. Perhaps we leave this on the table in relation to further investigations with our staff in relation to the conversation that was had with the entity that was mentioned, and you yourself, Deputy Mayor, brought that to the attention of the chambers. Would that be fair and reasonable?
So, Councillor Henson, you're suggesting we leave this on the
I suggest that
table?
we leave this on the table until further investigations have taken place, negotiations perhaps with the entity, and may I mention the entity? That's fine, that's why I did it. So that being the case, that further investigations go and relegate certainly perhaps the CEO to that.
June ordinary, councillor. Happy with
Yep,
June ordinary?
that's fine.
So do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Shoemaker. It's a procedural motion, so we go straight to the vote. All those in favour to leave it on the table as their recommendation. Thank you. Unanimous. Okay, move on to 15.4, Highsville Progress Association Inc. request to lease lot 112 on SP 116355. The officer's recommendation that the South Burnett Regional Council, in accordance with S 2361B2 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, endeavour to enter into a licence to occupy effective 1st of September 22 with the Highsville Progress Association for part of Lot 112 on SP 116355 for a term of 3 years. 2, South Burnett Regional Council delegates to the Chief Executive Officer the power to negotiate, finalise and execute the licence to occupy between Council and the Highsville Progress Association Inc. on terms and conditions the Chief Executive Officer reasonably considers are satisfactory to Council. And 3, that the South Burnett Regional Council notes that the licence to occupy will be subject to approval from the Department of Transport and Main Roads in accordance with Clause 2.4.3 of the lease between the State of Queensland, represented by the Department of Transport, and the South Burnett Regional Council. Do I have a mover? Councillor Duff. Seconder, Councillor Henson. Comments? Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So this one has been on the table for quite some time. Councillor Henson and I have been involved with the negotiations. The Highsville Progress Association would like to take on that area that's on the corner there in the entrance to the village of Highsville. It's always untidy, it's always overgrown, and they have ideas to clean it up, get rid of the weeds, and they've put some ideas on a rough plan of what they'd like to see happen, but they're driving that, and I just think it's wonderful to give some power to the community by letting them enrich the village of Highsville by tidying up that area. And yeah, they've got so much passion and drive, and they're waiting to get this lease happening, or this permanent to occupy happening, so that they can start to just at the very least clean that area up. And the chair is Barbara Hockey, and she's also heavily involved in the Rural Fire Brigade, and they've been burning that area and looking after it pretty much for council in any case. So this would formalise that, and then they've got some ideas about what they can do with it into the future, which would everything that happens there would come back to council in any case. So really keen to support this. Thank you.
Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Fully supportive of this one. I certainly think we've seen what commitments like this have done in communities like Blackbutt and Proston. We've got a beautiful community there, maintaining all of the plants and things in the main street. I'm really excited by this project. I've seen the Hyattsville Progress Association's vision. I've seen them explain it to us, and quite frankly, I can see it built and done. I think they're hardworking people that will get this project up and running pretty quickly. As I keep saying in this chamber, the way our towns and villages look and feel really does matter. This area is a gathering place for the Hyattsville community, and I think, just in closing, that it would be a great project, Councillor Duff, if the association did work toward putting together a project plan to bring some of those ideas back for some of that seed funding that council offers through its community grants program. I'd really like to see us do what we can to support the Hyattsville Progress Association to see this project come to fruition. Thank you.
Further speakers? Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, look, fully supportive of it. But just want to make note there, one of the main things with this is that dot point 3, and subject to approval from the Department of Transport and Main Roads. And wouldn't that be good, because there's some fairly historical literature in this particular piece of land. So it'd be a great result for Hyattsville, and until that happens, I guess we can't put the cart before the horse. But yeah, certainly would love to see it progress, and there'd be some work in this space, because it's just that. There's a lot of history there, and it has been, as we're all well aware, quite complicated with that section of land. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Duff for closing comments. Thank you.
No, just obviously everyone, I'm hoping, supports this. It's a great opportunity, as Councillor Shoemaker said, for the community group to do something really beneficial to Hyattsville and just pretty up the village of Hyattsville. Thank you.
Let's go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 15.5, request from SBCare to remove trees from entrance to Town Common Hall for installation of a rose garden. That's at page 340, where it's recommended that permission be granted to SBCare Incorporated to relocate the Kingroy Senior Citizens Club rose garden to the northern end of the hall around the existing flagpole, and permission be granted to SBCare Incorporated to trim the 2 trees at the front entrance of the Kingroy Town Common Hall. Do we have a mover? Yes, Councillor Potter, and seconded Councillor Henson. Councillor Potter, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. No, this is a great idea, but I'm just wondering, after the discussions when we were there the other day meeting with them, whether we could add the signage, because we talked about them moving the signage for the Senior Citizens Club as well to that area. So I'm just wondering, should that be in that wording as well?
Mr CEO, could we add the word signage after rose garden in that first point? Yeah, so just the first point there, club and signage. You comfortable with that, Councillor Potter and Councillor Henson? Comfortable with that? Thank you. Okay. Further speakers? Go to the vote. Sorry, Councillor Shoemaker, sorry.
Sorry, I just had a question, Mr Mayor, just in relation to that flagpole. I know certainly when we were there the other day, Councillor Jones highlighted it's quite old. It really does need a paint or a bit of love, and I know there's been a lot of work done in the past around flagpoles in some of our communities. I guess just a question to CEO Mark, whether we might be able to take on notice or add it to the motion that we just have a look at options to refresh that flagpole and make sure it's working properly for the senior citizens.
Thank you, Mr CEO.
Thanks, Mayor. Through you, flagpoles can be their own unique challenge, as we discovered with a light pole the other day, which is a different conversation. But if we take it on notice, Councillor, because flagpoles, believe it or not, need building approval, and there's a whole raft of things. So what would seem to be an incredibly simple concept to a normal mind tends to get quite difficult. But yes, we'll take it on notice and follow up.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, certainly. Thank you, CEO Mark. I asked that question of you because I know you've got extensive experience in this area. I guess my thinking really is just making sure the ropes work properly, and if we can give it a paint or something like that. I think from my inspection, it looked like it was in reasonable order. It just needed a bit of a freshen up. So really appreciate you taking that on notice. Thank you.
Okay, further speakers? Councillor Potter, I think to close? No? Happy with that. We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 15.6, public consultation plan for resolution of hall tenures at 341. Committee has recommended the South Bennett Regional Council commence community consultation for the future tenure options for the Monjaw, Tingura and Cloyna halls, with the Monjaw and Cloyna hall committees to assist in facilitation of public meetings. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, seconded Councillor Shoemaker. Speakers, Councillor Duff.
Yes, Mr Mayor, just really keen to involve, as I've said in the committee meeting, with the Monjaw and Cloyna Hall committees. They're very passionate committees, and yeah, they'll help to drive the public consultation and understand the process. Thank you.
Further speakers? To the vote, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 16.1, Regional Water Assessment Bundaberg and Burnett Stakeholder Advisory Group meeting at 3:42, where the committee has recommended the South Bennett Regional Council nominate Councillor Shoemaker to attend the BBRWA Investment Logic Map Workshop on 30 and 31 May 2022, or on a date as advised, and that a technical support officer is identified to assist with the workshop. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, seconded Councillor Henson. Speakers? Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, Mr Mayor. Sorry, I was just going to acknowledge that the dates I've been given is the 1st and 2nd of June, which is next week. I am really concerned. Some of these workshops and things are happening at a rate of knots. And I think it is really important that the South Bennett has a strong representation at the table here. Very pleasing to talk with Stuart Nicholson this morning. Him and a number of other significant water users in the area have actually gotten together and started pulling some information that I'm supporting them with around quantifying what the meaning of water really is across a number of industries in the South Bennett. We just recently put out a media release. Thank you to our media officer, Jo, for her work on that, just to encourage members of the community, if you have got an interest, regardless of whatever industry you're in, if you are located in the South Bennett and could do with more water, and that's the key thing here, could do with more water. I understand there may not be a project directly related to your idea of what you would do with more water, but if you could, please complete that survey. Because at the end of the day, they're going to look at the needs of the South, the North, Burnett and Bundaberg, and determine what 5 key projects from the long list of options across that area get escalated for business case development. And so any information that relates to the water usage here in the South Bennett is really, really important that it's fed through this system. I can say very grateful that all of the work we've done to date with the demand assessment for the National Water Infrastructure Development Fund project and the demands assessment undertaken by for the Gordon Brook, Blackbutt and Barlil Baramba Weirs project will be included in this process. But I'm very mindful that through the work we've done, there's a number of projects that were on that long list that we have not, the work on that has not been able to be accelerated purely because we simply don't have the funds. But they're all very, very worthy projects. So the demand assessment that the Bundaberg and Burnett Stakeholder Advisory Group are sort of undertaking really is looking at the demand for water across those areas. It's not as specific as our process. Our process is really nailed down to what lot and plan number you are, exactly how many megs you would have, what you're willing to pay and what you would do with it. This is a very broad brush vanilla look, which I have challenged extensively in those meetings, but it is my understanding that this whole process is about looking at what could be, and I just can't encourage my community enough to fill in that survey. As simple as it may seem, it really could be the difference between the South Burnett getting a project up or not. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, councillor. Okay, any further speakers? We've updated the dates. Thank you, councillor Shoemaker. Further speakers? No, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. On to section 17, which is the information section. Mr CEO, sorry. Oh, councillor Henson, thank you. Thank you. We'll just note that. Thanks, Bree. So 17.1, recommendation is that the delegated authority report be received. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, second Councillor Jones. Speakers to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Tim, can we bring Councillor Henson back? Thank you. Oh, yeah. We'll continue on. 17.2, list of correspondence pending completion of assessment report. Recommendation that the list of correspondence pending completion of assessment report be received. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, secondly Councillor Jones. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay. Right. We're now up to, there's no questions on notice, so we'll proceed through to section 19, council, and there is a recommendation here at section 19, and we've just got Councillor Henson back now. So section 19, where the recommendation is that council considers the confidential reports listed below in a meeting closed to the public in accordance with section 254J of the Local Government Regulation 2012. 19.1, release of sewage, December 2021 at Ullah Street, Kingroy, under sections 254J-E and G. 19.2, payment proposal for overdue rates various, under section 254J-I. 19.3, waiving of interest on assessments stated, under section 254J-I. 19.4, waiving of interest on the assessment number stated, 254J-I. 19.5, South Burnett Sporting Shooters, request for land shooting range, under section 254J-G. 19.6, industrial land development, under section 254J-G. And 19.7, rural health management services, Kingroy Medical Centre, under section 254J-G. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, second Councillor Duff. Speakers? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. We'll now close out the public meeting and go into the confidential section. And to our members in the gallery, we'll have to ask you to pop out now while we do this, but thank you very much for your attendance. Thank you. Point 2, payment proposal for overdue rates, various. Recommendation is that South Burnett Regional Council does not concede to the proposed repayment plan of $1,000 per month on the outstanding debt due to it not complying with the current adopted policy. Council will delegate the authority to the Chief Executive Officer, General Manager Finance and Corporate to renegotiate a payment plan with the customer on these lots that is more suitably aligned to Council's policy. Do we have a mover? Councillor Jones, seconded Councillor Shoemaker. Speakers to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Can we bring back our colleagues? Thank you. Councillors Potter and Henson will now return. And we will then go back to item 19.1. So the recommendation at 19.1 is that South Burnett Regional Council provide written advice to Plenty Foods confirming that Council continue to monitor and or test as required on a regular basis, and should further exceedances be recorded at any time in the future, that Council will revoke their trade waste permit and terminate their discharge point with an appropriate period of notice, and that Council pursue recovery of damages from Plenty Foods for costs incurred post 5 December 2021 as a result of discharges of oils and fats into the sewage network. Do we have a mover? Councillor Jones, seconded Councillor Potter. Speakers? Councillor Shoemaker.
I just have a question in relation to that event in December. I was of the mind that we received notification that it was in fact an accident, that there were reasons why. Sorry, if we have to go back into closed, I'm happy to. But I just, before I make this decision, I do want to confirm there was correspondence to council that indicated that this happened and that there were that there was a plant failure, and that is why it happened.
Thanks, Councillor. And the answer is going to probably sound a little bit not harsh, but factual. It doesn't matter. Not aware of that it was an accident or not, just off the top of my head, but the issue for the breach for council is if there's a breach of an environmental activity, council's held liable in the first instance, and then we have to backtrack it back. So any issues with that is we have to deal with the EPA and carry the front end of it. If there's an accident, that's immaterial to the department when we talk to them. As far as, and I'll happy to have a more elegant answer to it, but yeah, so if there was or wasn't an accident, it doesn't change the fact.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Further speakers? We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Oh, sorry. No, it's not. Councillor Shoemaker, let's go to the vote. Councillor Jones, did you want to speak in wrapping up? No? Sure, we'll go to the vote. Sorry, I jumped the gun there. Those in favour? Councillor Erkins, Duff, Councillor... this has been a long day, hasn't it? Councillor Jones, Potter, Henson and Otto, 4. Those against? Councillor Shoemaker. That's been carried 6 votes to 1. Thank you all. Okay, 19.3, waiving of interest on assessment as stated. It's recommended that the matter lay on the table until the June ordinary meeting. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, seconded Councillor Shoemaker. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 19.5. Thank you, Bree. And we have recommendation there that... Sorry, have I gone too far? 19.4, waiving of interest on the assessment number as stated. Recommendation is that having considered all information, council concedes to the request to waive the interest on the outstanding rates on assessment number as stated to the value of $1,160.89. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, seconded Councillor Potter. Speakers? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 19.5, South Bennett Sporting Shooters. Request for land. Recommendation is that South Bennett Regional Council continue to liaise with the South Bennett branch of Shooters Union in relation to identification of a suitable site for the establishment of shooting range within the region, and advise that the previously discussed quarry site is unsuitable, and encourage the group to work collaboratively with existing clubs. Do we have a mover? Councillor Henson, seconder. Councillor Duff. Speakers? To the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 19.6, Industrial Land Development. Recommendation is that council form a working group in conjunction with the Department of State Development and Infrastructure, Local Government and Planning, and 2 representatives from the MBDA to investigate options for the development of industrial land in the South Burnett Mergen. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, seconded Councillor Shoemaker. Speakers? Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 19.7 is the final item. Rural Health Management Services Kingroy Medical Centre. It's the recommendation is that the report be received for information. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker, seconded Councillor Potter. Speakers? Councillor Shoemaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I'd just like to add that a report be brought back to council following further consultation. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Are you comfortable with that, Councillor Potter? Yep, very good. Okay, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Meeting declared closed at 1:31 p.m. Thanks for your attendance and enjoy the rest of your day.